Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Summit. For the welcoming remarks, we would like to welcome up to the stage Gunvor, the CEO of Hanaholmen. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody, Your Excellencies and dear friends. A warm welcome to this year's edition of the Hanaholmen Initiative Summit. Last Sunday, I was listening to a report from Valencia, Spain, in my favorite Swedish radio program, God morgon världen, Good Morning World. The program was about the response to the extreme floods about a year ago due to climate change that killed more than 200 people. Criticism was raised that local authorities reacted too late, resulting in devastating loss of human lives. One of the persons that was interviewed asked for disaster response to be the mandate of and coordinated by the EU instead of local authorities. I think this comment captured something essential in where we still have a lot of dissemination and awareness raising to do in Europe for sure, but to some extent also in our own region. We do not always have the luxury of delegating the responsibility upwards for taking action when disaster and crisis strikes. We must aim at societies where local communities, even individuals, know what to do, although coordination, benchmarking, policy making, etc., at regional, national, and European level naturally is needed. This is why we also focus on the responsibility of the individual in our discussions today. It's often said that war is a cruel teacher. Through its brutality, war forces insights and understanding that would otherwise be difficult to grasp. The ongoing war in Europe, in our immediate neighborhood, has compelled us to become better, and we should continue not only to support Ukraine in the war they are conducting on behalf of all of us, but also to learn from their experiences. Not at least to understand better how technology has become both a main tool for both warfare and societal resilience is important in this regard. The focus on including the private sector and technical innovation closer to the civil defense is one of the important messages also from this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Training Program. One of the focuses in this year's program was to investigate the resilience of the deeply integrated Finnish and Swedish financial market in a situation of a severe hybrid attack. One of the proposals from our participants is to organize a scenario-based discussion, including public and private stakeholders, to focus on critical financial operations. The aim would be to mitigate common cross-border risks and also drive forward better understanding of the interconnectedness. Overall, we hear that we need the sector-specific workshops alongside with cross-sectoral, more holistic approach, and these both are needed. Many of our participants ask for this as well as a concrete cross-border rehearsal. I really urge you to read the report from this year's participants that will be available to everybody interested. It contains many important observations that deserve further reflection. Dear friends, we know that strong military capabilities alone are not longer enough. Resilience is also built through crisis preparedness and cross-border cooperation between good neighbors. In a changing security landscape, the ability to adapt quickly and to cooperate broadly becomes a decisive strength. For Sweden and Finland, this requires a high level of preparedness and coordinated responses across sectors and borders. To meet precisely this need, the Hanaholmen initiative was conceived during the first phase of the pandemic, when societies were paralyzed and borders closed. Then, 5 years ago, we could not have imagined how great the need would become. After 5 years now, I think I dare say we have come a long way, but the journey is definitely not yet over. This work is an ongoing work to keep up with the new people in new positions, new threats, and new cooperations. And what we have learned also over the years is that we don't have to become similar in our ways of addressing disasters, but we do have to learn how to work together better. Not only the training program is important, also this opportunity that the annual summit offers to highlight new learnings and topical issues is very valuable. So I want to express a huge thank you to all of you who have supported the program financially and content-wise, and I want to read them out. The Swedish Civil Contingency Agency, the Finnish Security Committee, the National Emergency Supply Agency, the Defense Universities of Sweden and Finland, our advisory committee led by the chair of the Parliamentary Defense Committee in Sweden, former Minister of Defense Peter Hultqvist, our operational group, and many others. The Hanaholmen initiative has become a truly cross-border, cross-sectoral affair in its best sense. So once again, warmly welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, Gunvor, for those opening words, for setting the stage for today's event. So a very warm welcome to all of you also on our behalf. We have the pleasure and the honor to be your moderators during today's discussions. My name is Alexander Zilliacus. I work as Senior Specialist at the National Emergency Supply Agency, but I am currently stationed in Sweden at the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, MSB.
And my name is Hanna Waerland-Fager from the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, MSB, but I'm currently stationed at and working at the Swedish Embassy here in Helsinki. So you could say that we are a quite good illustration and living example of the close Finnish-Swedish cooperation that we will speak about here today.
And we, of course, are definitely not the only ones speaking about it. Security, resilience, preparedness, these are really, really hot topics, not only in our countries, but also in Europe and in the world. And that's why in today's first session, we're looking into some of the insights of what has happened in the world since last November, when the Hanaholmen Initiative Summit 2024 happened. But here's a really super short summary on our part.
On a bilateral level, the Finnish-Swedish governments had a joint meeting last September and then signed 2 letters of intent, one on security of supply and the other one on protection of civilians, and more specifically, large-scale cross-border cooperation. And the preparation of this joint planning between the countries in both of these areas are currently ongoing between the responsible Finnish and Swedish authorities.
Meanwhile, in the European Union, at the time of the last summit, the so-called NESA report had only just been published. Now, just a year later, which is a very, very short time in EU time, we have an EU preparedness strategy, we are reviewing the Union civil protection mechanism, there's an EU stockpiling strategy, and there's a host of other strategies and directives which are linked to preparedness.
And on the Nordic level, exactly 1 year ago, the Nordic governments decided to sign a new declaration of the so-called Haga Cooperation for Civil Preparedness, focusing also on preparing for the risk of war. And part of this also having a stronger and closer cooperation between Haga and NORDEFCO, the Nordic Military Cooperation Forum.
And all of these topics we will touch upon today. But as you can hear, there is a lot going on. It's very rapid development. And it's of course driven by the unfortunately worsening security situation in our near region. So with all this stuff going on, it can be quite difficult to get a good grip about what is actually important in all of this happening. But fortunately, to start us off today, we have 2 people with us here today who are very well placed to help us make sense of this situation. So if you could please welcome up to the stage the Secretary General of the Finnish Security Committee, Petteri Korvala, and the Director General of the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, MSB, Mikael Frisell. Please give them a big hand, everybody.
We thought about starting with the big picture. We said in the introduction what has happened the last year on a European level, Nordic, and also bilateral level. But let's start with the European Union. What would you say? It is a quite long list, what has happened. What would you say is the most important EU development, and what do you think the EU can do more of? If we start with Petteri.
Thank you, Hanna. Excellent question. The European Preparedness Union strategy stands out as a key initiative, as I see. It's a comprehensive framework launched by the European Commission and the High Representative to enhance the European Union's collective capability to anticipate, prevent, and respond to complex cross-border crises and threats. It adopts a whole of society and all hazards approach integrated various sectors and actors across all levels of government. The main goal of the strategy is to ensure a secure and resilient EU where member states and the Union are better prepared for diverse challenges from geopolitical tensions and hybrid threats to, for example, climate change impacts as well as natural disasters. However, European Union could do more to ensure that its security efforts are better coordinated with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, particularly in areas like military mobility and resilience.
Thank you. Mikael.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to be here. It's my fourth time this year, and they say something about the Finnish-Swedish cooperation and the important place to meet at Hanaholmen. So thank you, Gunvor, for hosting us today. It's always a pleasure to be here. I think Petteri mentioned the most that I had also to say, but I would like to say that I think the EU Preparedness Union strategy is very, very important for Europe because that will gather the European nations together. And for Sweden and Finland, I think it is in many ways in line with the development we are doing in Sweden with the total defense concept and what you are doing in Finland with the comprehensive security concept. That is very, very important. And for us, it's important that it is an all-hazard approach, as you mentioned, whole of society approach, whole of government approach, very, very important. And also that we're now talking about the whole risk and threat spectrum, including the worst case scenario war. Even if we from the Nordic countries and the Baltic states want that EU underline that even more, the worst case scenario. The other thing that is very important with the strategy, I think, is that it has a more broader approach. We are talking now about civil-military cooperation. Even NATO are doing that, and we can come back to that later. We are talking about more dual-use capabilities. We are talking about private-public cooperation in another way that we have done before. And we're also talking about have a hub, crisis preparedness hub with a cross-sectoral mandate in the EU. So there in many, many ways the same thoughts that we have in Sweden and Finland. That is very, very important. The other thing I would like to mention is, as we know, the rescEU. Because I think the rescEU is a very important tool for European Union when talking about civil preparedness in the society. And in Finland you have excellent medical stockpiles and the CBRN stockpiles, and it was an excellent exercise. I visited up in Uleå in early October regarding the CBRN stockpiles. And in Sweden we have medical stockpiles, we have shelter capacity, and we also have the firefighting planes. So the rescEU is also very, very important tools in European Union. So there is a lot of things happening in the right direction now regarding civil preparedness. The all nation, we need to gather in a better way that we have done before.
And so the EU is on the right track, I guess. We can take from this. And you both actually also mentioned NATO. And of course, the alliance, or I should say our alliance, I guess now, also it frames both our nation's security policies in very important ways, of course. And now that NATO is going back to its roots and kind of putting focus back on defense and deterrence, What would you say is the role of NATO's resilience work in all of this?
Should I start?
If you want to.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because now both EU and NATO are working with the term resilience. And as you know, last week in Stockholm, Sweden and MSB was hosting the first NATO conference regarding civilian planning. So the resilience within NATO is more or less how to implement and improve and strengthen the civil-military cooperation and civil-mil planning. That is very, very important for NATO now. And of course, we also need to have NATO and EU cooperate in a better way than we have done before. We are moving in the right directions. We are not there yet, but we need to start also between the different organizations. But resilience in NATO is more or less civil-military cooperation, private-public cooperation in order to build strong and robust and resilient societies.
Thank you very much. Mikael already took up quite many excellent examples related to NATO resilience work. I see resilience in NATO as a core component of deterrence arrangements. It ensures that member states can withstand and recover from different disruptions like cyber attacks, disinformation, or sabotage. In Finland, the foundation of societal crisis resilience is our comprehensive security solution. It is a whole of society approach based and aligns very well with the NATO resilience goals. I would like to also highlight the Finland and Sweden's long-standing partnership with NATO, which lays down a strong foundation for our current full membership. Our forces has been already for quite a long time interoperable, and we have participated in joint exercises and in crisis management missions for decades already. Membership in NATO has formalized this cooperation and gives us seats in different tables and voice in collective defense planning, which significantly enhance our national but also our common regional resilience.
Can I add two things?
Of course.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Petteri, that Sweden and Finland now we are security provider to NATO. We are together doing NATO stronger. That is really important to have. Okay, we are safer nations when we are allies, but we are really security provider. And I have one example. During the conference last week, I had the opportunity to be on stage together with the Swedish Chief of Defense and talk about the document the Chief of Defense and I had decided 15th of September in Sweden, planning assumption for total defense 2025 to 2030. And I think that document, it's 7 planning scenarios, it's an open document including all stakeholders in the total defense, and it described consequences in the society. It's what to plan for, not how, but what, and it's 7 planning scenarios. And I think that can be an inspiration for NATO and the allies how to conduct in real practice civil and military planning together. So it was a great opportunity to be on stage with the Chief of Defense and discuss this with NATO. And I think and I heard we got quite good feedback, and that is the same work we are doing in Sweden and Finland with comprehensive security and total defense. So we are security provider to NATO.
A follow-up question regarding that, because now we have spoken briefly about both the EU and NATO, and also you have both emphasized the strong Finnish-Swedish relations. It's a quite unique cooperation in one sense. If you can continue on that line, Mikael and Petteri, what would you say, what should the Finnish-Swedish cooperation together, the authorities and other actors and stakeholders do in these different international areas to have this common voice and joint approach?
Thank you very much, Hanna. there is still plenty of room and need for our continued bilateral cooperation, as I see what makes our cooperation unique is the deep trust, shared strategic interests, geographic proximity, all based on our long common history. We can together act quickly and flexibly, which is especially valuable in scenarios that require rapid response or coordination in the Baltic Sea region or as well as in the Arctics. So we have differences in our preparedness structure and legislation, and I see those as both opportunities but also challenges. Differences can pose coordination challenges, especially in legal frameworks for crisis response. However, they also offer a lot of opportunities to learn from each other and innovate. Our comprehensive security concept, as well as Sweden's total defense arrangements, can complement each other when approached with openness and mutual respect. One of the keys to success is a shared understanding of our security-related characteristics, including their impacts to our collaboration.
Yeah, first of all, we need to realize that the Swedish-Finnish cooperation is the most far-reaching bilateral cooperation that we have, and it has been very, very successful. And if I go back a few years, when I've been working in the military, we have done a lot together. The FISA cooperation. We have joint planning, joint exercises, joint procurements, and the defense forces now are preparing for establish the forward land forces in Rovaniemi as Finland with host nation, as Sweden with leading nation. So now when we are allies, we have even more deepened the cooperation. And I think the civilian side can learn from the military cooperation, and we are learning a lot, and we do it that very, very fast. Because right now, as you mentioned in your introduction, we are doing operational planning together on the civilian side. For instance, during, I think it was mid-April, I got an assignment from the Swedish government, and I think my Finnish colleague got it also from the Finnish government, to start operational planning regarding mass evacuation and uncontrolled movements up in the high north. We are doing that, and we are involved both the armed forces from Finland and Sweden, and also now the Joint Forces Command in Brunsum is in that loop. And there you can see planning with military mobility going eastwards and civilian mobility going westwards, that we coordinate that now. And that is as close as possible to the NATO regional planning. The second thing that we are doing and will do more together is security supply with joint stockpiling. I had the privilege to sign a strategic framework with the CEO, Janne Kenkkonen, from NESA earlier this October. A strategic framework for the coming years, what to do and how to do it. And now we want to go from word to actions. We want to have joint stockpiles established next year. And we focus on grains and fuels, and we are focused on the northern part of Sweden and Finland during the next years. So there is another example of what we can do more, and we will do more. And then we have exercises, lessons learned, and as you mentioned, a lot of things that we can do together, and we are doing that, and we are doing that in a very, very good way. And I think we inspire other nations. We have Norway now as observer during this course this year, and we want to expand the Swedish-Finnish cooperation to the Nordic countries and also to the Baltic states, all three Baltic states. As an example, this Finnish-Swedish planning we are doing regarding mass evacuation, we will have a seminar early March next year, where we have invited Norway, Denmark, the three Baltic states, and also Poland and Germany, in order to open up the operational planning around the Baltic Sea. So we have a strong Finnish-Swedish cooperation. We need to expand that to a Nordic cooperation and also cooperation around the Baltic Sea as allies in this region to take care of the challenging situation. So we are doing a lot, and we can do more.
Thank you.
And as a kind of to close down finally on the national level, are there any national level developments that you would like to lift up from your own country as particularly important right now? And are there any investments that are missing or something else that we could perhaps improve on nationally?
Maybe the most significant development in Finland has been the strengthening of Finland's crisis resilience as a whole, particularly throughout the renewed security strategy for society. This as a whole provides also Sweden a stable and predictable partner and ally, a neighbor in regional crisis preparedness and supports joint planning and exercises aiming to common goals. Collaboration and coordination between different administrative branches are very important at this stage, and it prevents potential vulnerabilities between sectors and levels of society. Unfortunately, if there is a lack of coordination, the adversary exploits these gaps in its operations. Also, while both countries have made substantial investments, there is still need to enhance, for example, cyber defense capabilities, secure supply chains, and ensure the resilience of critical infrastructure. In near future, I would like to see more joint investments in shared capabilities, covering, for example, areas such as situational awareness and logistics.
Okay, if we start on a national level, I think I will mention three important developments. The first is, and then I need to go back a few years, the autumn 2022, when we re-established the preparedness structure in Sweden with preparedness sectors, civil defense regions, and so on, and also agents with the preparedness tasks. That is very, very important because that structure now is we're using that now when we develop the total defense. That is the first thing. The second thing is what happened this 1st of October. I have a command group in the society. When I meet the 12 director generals for the preparedness sectors, the 6 governors for the civil defense regions, head of central bank, and also the director general for psychological defense agency, we signed a common agreement how to coordinate and direct, or if I use a military term, command and control the civil defense development, and if we need to take care of crisis and war. That has been really, really important because now we are not discussing responsibilities and roles. We are discussing how to conduct and develop the civil defense here and now. That has been really important. So that was the second thing. The third thing is, of course, the decision from the government this summer that pinpointed MSB as national coordinator and responsible for security supply in Sweden. So that has also been very, very, very important. And if we look at investments and what's lacking, I would say, first of all, I'm really happy that we now have a lot of money coming in to the civil defense. We can really build a strong and robust society and resilient society. And I'm really happy that we have a common agreement with all political parties in the parliament in Sweden. This is the way we will do it. This is the goal we will achieve. And now we are focusing on investments in physical infrastructure, security supply in mainly 3 areas: food, fuel, and medical. And also focusing on strengthen the municipalities and build resilient and strong municipalities and capabilities on local level. What's lacking? I think the next step will be, and you mentioned that, Petteri, we need to invest more in critical infrastructure. When you looking at the news every day, you see what's happening in Ukraine. We need to protect our critical infrastructure, both physical, in the cyber domain, and also in the air domain. And there I think all nations in Europe, in NATO, in EU, have this weaknesses. We need to strengthen the protection of the critical infrastructure. And in Sweden right now, there is ongoing planning between my agency and the armed forces where we are looking into this area. We will report back to the government during the spring. So that I think will be a very important next step. And then, of course, we need to focus more on secure supply. We need to focus more on cyber security. Both the private and the public actors need to strengthen their capability there. So there's some examples.
You both have quite a lot of knowledge about the other countries' system, the preparedness structures. Is there one feature that you would like to steal, if you can take one thing, from Finland and Sweden, respectively? Or
I would like to steal one thing.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mikael.
Okay, I had the possibility to be in the same panel as the former president in Finland, Niinistö, in Halmstad, in Tylösand this August. And I think President Niinistö had a very, very clear message, this pragmatic message that you have in Finland. I really want to steal that. Hope for the best, planning for the worst. That is the first thing I want to steal. The second thing is I would like to steal is now when we have a very, very close cooperation with NESA, and when we have started the journey with secured supply in Sweden, I want to steal your excellent cooperation, public-private cooperation with the companies you have in Finland and take that to Sweden. There is an example. And then the last example, I would like to have this culture in the society that you have in Finland, the preparedness culture. We try to build that in Sweden with a brochure and so on, but I think back to that pragmatic view. Hope for the best, planning for the worst.
Thank you. Petteri.
Thank you very much. Mikael just explained a lot of things that has been done in the near future to increase the level of Sweden's societal resilience. Those recent efforts to strengthen total defense and integrate that solution into a broader international framework, those are extremely impressive. Finland, for example, could benefit from Sweden's approach in engaging municipalities and regional actors, as well as civil society in preparedness, which adds both depth and flexibility to a national crisis preparedness solutions.
Well, it seems like we still have quite a lot of depths to plumb in our bilateral collaboration, I guess. So thank you very much, Mikael and Petteri. I think this has been a very enlightening conversation for all of us. So please, let's give a big hand to our panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we are moving along. Thank you very much. We're moving along to our next session, which is titled European Comprehensive Security and Civilian Crisis Management Capabilities. And to give us some initial remarks on this topic, it's my great pleasure to invite to the stage Johanna Sumuvuori, who is Director for the European Centre of Excellence for Civilian Crisis Management. So please give a big applause to Johanna, who has traveled in from Berlin, where the CEO is located. Right, yes, please.
Thank you very much, and dear distinguished guests, hyvät ystävät, kära vänner. I actually traveled from Herttoniemi to this event where I have my other home in Helsinki. But it's really good to be back to Hanasaari. During my past several years in my professional career, I have had several occasions I've had the opportunity to address diverse Swedish-Finnish audiences at Hanasaari Cultural Center. And there has always been something special in the air. And it's not just that we join our forces in many different realms, such as a Eurovision Song Contest. I was born and bred in Vaasa region myself, so I cannot be without mentioning that Barbara Pastu was joining us in a different way earlier this year, but now we are talking a little bit more serious matters, such as comprehensive security. So thank you so much for Gunvor Kronman, Director Kronman, for providing me with this opportunity to share my thoughts as the director, relatively new director for the European Centre of Excellence for Civilian Crisis Management, based in Berlin. Those of who are not yet familiar with the Centre, it is a European cooperation organization established by the German government in 2020 in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And Germany wanted to join forces with other EU member states and invited other countries to join. And it started with 14 countries, including Finland and Sweden, which were the first ones to join. But currently, we are 24 member states, EU member states, and we are going to be 55 soon. So what we are doing, actually, we are looking at comprehensive security from the more European perspective and more from external security perspective. Now, this discussion here has been really interesting, and it has been focused a lot on the Europe's internal and maybe even at the national level preparedness and readiness and comprehensive security. But if you look at the security matters, internal and external are informing each other. They are impacting each other, and we cannot actually plan anything security-wise if we don't take into account external interconnectedness between internal and external security realms. Civilian crisis management is an invaluable foreign policy instrument for the European Union and its member states, and it actually plays an important role in Europe's comprehensive security approach. Practically, it means non-military stabilization delivered by EU member state civilian experts, police, justice, border, governance, climate, environment, gender, and hybrid and cyber specialists, as well as so-called FIMI, which stands for Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference. Those experts are usually deployed in several missions. We have currently in the EU 13 civilian CSDP missions outside the EU, and those expertise that we actually send beyond the borders of the European Union, we actually learn a lot of skills and expertise that we can bring back home when we get those experts back. Mikael and Petteri mentioned hybrid and cyber quite many times in the previous panel. If I think of one example, for example, from Moldova, in September there were national elections held in Moldova, and there was a really tight situation between different types of alliances to different directions in Europe. And luckily, Moldova chose the European path in those elections. But how many of you knew that European Union actually has a partnership mission in Moldova, focusing especially in hybrid, cyber and FIMI threats? And because of that assistance that they were able to give to Moldovan government and in governmental institutions, I believe that it played a role how they could handle a lot of disinformation spreading across the society, a lot of hybrid attacks or attempts of hybrid attacks. So finally, when we think of this, yes, it's something that we do externally outside of Europe, but at the same time, it has a direct impact on our own security. What happens in Moldova can happen here, and what happens in Moldova affects us because we are all interconnected. So we, as the European Centre of Excellence, what we do, we try to actually enhance national capabilities in civilian crisis management. We are not going to the missions. We don't work on the missions. We are based in Berlin, and we assist the national institutions in Finland and Sweden as well in how they can advance and enhance the national capabilities so that they are better equipped to send those experts, find those experts, recruit those experts, train those experts to be sent so that to those missions which EU External Action Service deploys. Finland and Sweden actually are, like I said yesterday, a certain kind of rock stars in this field. And I would like to also say very seriously that Finland and Sweden, we have a legacy in this matter. Civilian crisis management, as well as the kind of permanent civilian committee for civilian aspects, which is based in the, which is established in the EU decision-making structures, they are actually Nordic initiatives. I remember really well 1999 when Finland held the EU presidency. That was a time when Finnish and Swedish foreign ministers were working really closely together to advance civilian crisis management and comprehensive security, actually, as part of EU's comprehensive security and EU's overall crisis management structures. And I think that we have to take care of this legacy. And this audience here is actually probably one of the best audiences I can convey this message. So we meet, like it was discussed in the previous panel, we actually meet right now at the moment when Europe's security landscape is changing quite significantly and quite rapidly as well. Not only by wars on our borders, but also by increasing hybrid attacks, cyber intrusions, disinformation, and the politicization of migration as well. In this environment, the European Union's civilian common security and defense policy, civilian CSDP, is not an abstract external tool. It's not a charity, it's not something that we just give away, but it's actually one of the most tangible instruments of our own security and resilience. For over 2 decades, civilian CSDP has evolved from the early so-called FARA priorities of policing and rule of law into a sophisticated, flexible framework for addressing the full spectrum of modern society challenges, from hybrid threats to border management, organized crime, climate and environmental threats, and cyber resilience, and promoting gender equality as well. It represents what the European Union does best, an integrated approach to comprehensive security, bringing together our internal and external instruments, diplomacy and capacity building, development cooperation, and deterrence. Through civilian missions in Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Kosovo, and beyond, the EU demonstrates that civilian CSDP is a forward layer of civilian defense, acting beyond our borders to protect our citizens and the single market within them. When EU advisors, for example in Chisinau or Kyiv, work on countering disinformation, improving border controls, or reforming policing and judicial systems, they are strengthening the very foundations of Europe's internal security. In this sense, civilian CSDP is not only a pillar of the EU's external action, but also an instrument of our own internal security and preparedness. A vital component of what the European Commission now calls the Preparedness Union strategy, which was mentioned also in the previous panel. And it was actually initiated, or it's stemming from this Niinistö report that was published earlier and actually commissioned by the President of the Commission, Ms. von der Leyen. I think now when we have this Swedish-Finnish audience here, I think it's something also good to note that this is not something new for us. I mean, I really like that phrase, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I think it has, at least as a Finn, I can say that it has always been part of our societies. And now this kind of thinking is, we have kind of almost a legacy also to spread it around in the world, to actually discuss EU's preparedness strategy in this very comprehensive way, how we can learn from each other, but how we can also assist our partner countries beyond our borders. And I hope that we take good care of this legacy. I'm now currently living in Berlin, Germany, and I have been really surprised. I didn't know how Finnish I am in terms of preparedness and readiness before discussing with many German experts who are now focusing really closely, especially on the Nordic societies, Finland and Sweden, trying to learn what Finland and Sweden are doing, how do they prepare. They are interested in all aspects from emergency shelters to contingency planning in general. And I think it's a great export item in our foreign policy as well, how we are prepared as societies. But it's not something new for us. For example, I've always known where the closest emergency shelter is, but I never thought that it's not the case in many other European countries. So we know this thing, and both countries have made civilian crisis management also a national priority long before joining the EU's defense frameworks. Finland and Sweden's contributions to civilian CSDP missions, training and secondment are among the most consistent and professional in Europe. Many countries in Europe look up to Finland and Sweden in this realm, civilian crisis management. They illustrate that investing in civilian capabilities is not an act of charity to others, but it's an investment in our shared European resilience. By linking their national systems to the European network, Sweden and Finland show how domestic expertise in policing, rule of law, or hybrid threat analysis can directly reinforce the Union's collective security posture. Yet, to realize the full potential of this instrument, cooperation must become institutionalized. The nexus between civilian CSDP and justice and home affairs agencies such as Europol, Frontex, Eurojust, Olaf is where our comprehensive security truly takes shape. Civilian CSDP missions already generate upstream impact, dismantling trafficking networks before they reach our borders, strengthening partner institutions that counter cybercrime and corruption, and aligning procedures that later facilitate judicial cooperation inside the Union. But we can go further. By formalizing data flows, embedding liaison mechanisms, and designing mandates that anticipate cooperation with justice and home affairs actors from the outset. Over the last year, the decisive EU-level shift has been towards a culture of preparedness, and that was really thoroughly already discussed in the previous panel. On 26th of March 25, the Euro Commission set out this already mentioned EU Preparedness Union strategy, which includes 30 actions and an implementation plan to move from ad hoc reactions to whole-of-society readiness, a common risk picture, cross-border and cross-sectoral exercises, tighter public-private protocols, stronger cyber and critical entity resilience, health security, and clear household guidance, which was also mentioned. It builds on the NESA report, which was nicely titled Safer Together. To achieve this type of readiness and preparedness, the foundation lies in the member state capability development. Every mission, every civilian mission is only as strong as the pool of national experts, structures and processes that support it. And this is why we as the European Centre of Excellence for Civilian Crisis Management try to play a role in this, working really closely together with our members, soon 25 member states, but also really closely collaborating with the EU External Action Service. Through facilitated working groups, we call them clusters, those working groups consisting of member states on national governance that is actually led by Finland, human resource management cluster, which is actually led by Luxembourg and Sweden, and strategic communication cluster, it's led by Portugal, Romania and Germany. Those working groups enable member states, including us, Finland and Sweden, to learn from each other and to test different best practices and models and to translate the commitments of the 2023 Civilian CSDP Compact, which is based on EU Strategic Compass, into tangible national reforms. So this peer-to-peer approach that we also encourage in our work is how Europe quietly builds the capacity it needs for future crises. To conclude, civilian CSDP is no longer a peripheral policy domain. It is a core component of the EU's comprehensive security architecture, an agreed instrument of foreign and internal policy connecting all 27 member states through common objectives and shared operational reality. Its contribution to our internal security is already measurable, but its potential remains even greater. By continuing to strengthen national capabilities, institutionalizing cooperation with justice and home affairs agencies, and sustaining political commitment, and this I cannot highlight more, political commitment, we ensure that the EU's first line of defense is not only military, it's also civilian. The future is civilian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johanna. Yes, please take a seat. And now we will ask two other panelists to join here on the stage. I would like to welcome up Jan Gerton, the Director General of the Swedish Agency for Total Defense Analysis. Then we have Teija Cederholm, Adjunct Professor of the National Defense University of Finland. and Linus Åhman, Project Leader for Resilience and Societal Security at the Secretariat of the Nordic Council of Ministers. Welcome. Please take a seat here in the middle.
Here, thanks.
I should also say as a short introduction that we will have time to some questions from the audience in the end before the break. So please think about a good and short question. I would like to start with you, Jan. The Swedish Agency for Total Defense Analysis, it's a quite new authority within the Swedish total defense landscape, not yet 3 years old. Can you, in short, please describe your mission at your agency?
Yes, thank you very much, Hanna. And let me just first say thank you for the invitation to join here. It's my first time at Hanaholmen, and I must say that I'm very impressed with both the venue and today's gathering. So thank you very much. The Swedish Agency for Defense Analysis is an independent government agency. Our main mission is to support the Swedish government with analysis and recommendations on Swedish total defense as a system, military defense and civil defense. We're tasked with analyzing and evaluating total defense activities and to act as an expert advisory body. We will monitor the continued build-up of total defense in relation to overall political objectives. We will also analyze and evaluate the effects and cost effectiveness of actions undertaken. And in addition to assignments that we receive from Swedish government, regeringen, originating in one ministry or other, we conduct projects at our own initiative. We have a strong mandate to collect the information that we need from Swedish government agencies and other actors, quote unquote. All our staff have security clearances and our IT infrastructure is built to allow processing and analysis of even highly sensitive classified information in a secure manner.
Thank you.
And Teija, you of course also work with analysis of total defense, but from a slightly different perspective. So how would you describe the current state of Nordic civil-military cooperation in the big picture? What's missing? Is there something that should be developed? What's your view?
Thank you also for inviting me here. So I'm also for the first time. So I think the foundation is solid, but it still needs practical deepening and interoperability, which we have already mentioned here this morning. And I think all Nordic countries share the same total defense mindset, integrating civilian and military efforts. And the region benefits from shared total defense and comprehensive security traditions, strong public trust, and well-established voluntary defense networks. I think that the practical systems that connect them across border still vary. And we have just heard that a lot is ongoing. And I think we need still more joint exercises that include not just armed forces, but municipalities, companies, essential service providers. So civilian systems, transport, healthcare, communication, they are the backbone of military readiness, and they have to function across the borders. So actually this is about NATO Article 3 and the 7 baseline requirements. I think Nordic cooperation would also benefit from stronger joint research and knowledge sharing. Platforms like Nordforsk contribute directly to this goal. And in our research team at the National Defense University, we've studied how civil-military cooperation can be built systematically. And one key finding is that trust and interoperability cannot be legislated. They have to be practiced. So shared exercises, data networks, and joint crisis simulations are where this cooperation becomes real. So next phase of Nordic cooperation should focus on practical interoperability, turning our shared principles into shared capabilities. The will is there. Now it's about building the mechanisms that make it work in a crisis. And I still would like to also highlight the importance of voluntary organizations. So trained, motivated volunteers can do many tasks that ease our authorities' workload. And a month ago, we had an exercise where participants represented national defense organizations from Finland, Sweden, and Estonia. And the aim was to network, learn to understand actors from different countries, and share best practices. And I would see that increasing voluntary organization cooperation and thus involving our citizens between Finland and Sweden would be one element to add to bilateral cooperation.
Thank you very much, Thea. If we stay on the Nordic level, I would like to direct a question to you, Linus, about the role of the Nordic Council of Ministers. We should say also that Finland and Åland are jointly the chair of the Nordic Council of Ministers this year. But what is the role and mandate of the Nordic Council of Ministers in building preparedness in the Nordic region today? And could this role be developed in any sort? And what is currently discussed regarding the role of the Nordic Council of Ministers?
Thank you. First of all, I also want to say thank you so much for the invitation today. I think this is a really broad question. When it comes to whenever the Nordic Council of Ministers are embarking on resilience and all of that, everybody gets really jumpy because we don't really have the mandate to talk about defense and emergency services and so on. However, we are active in all of those areas where resilience are built on a daily basis. So it means, resilience is not really something which is built by only government authorities, but it's a daily work at schools, in the healthcare sector, through a robust and effective labor market, through climate adaptation, and through the food production system, and research and innovation, and energy security, and all of that. And that's, those are the sectors where we are active. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but definitely we have a role to play. And I'm kind of the first person who now has this project management role of doing the cross-sectoral sort of strategic work. As Gunvor Kronman said eloquently in her speech, we need the sectors, but we also need the cross-sectoral. And so basically what we're trying to do is to move the needle a little bit so that whenever we talk about Nordic preparedness and societal security, we should think, there is a military arm of that, and there is a contingencies planning arm of that, but there is also a civil arm of that, which to my mind, that should be the Nordic Council of Ministers. That comes to mind for doing exactly that.
But short follow-up, there have been some discussion during the last couple of years about the Helsinki Agreement to perhaps change that. Would you, in short, describe that and also what that could mean for civil preparedness as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, any arrangements that were taken like 50 or 60 years ago would always benefit from scrutiny when it comes to whether they should be updated or adapted to the latest geopolitical developments. It is not really my place to say how that should be. There is a group working on that. I can say from a logical standpoint, it seems reasonable that, if we talk about polycrisis and if we talk about hybrid threats, those will target society not in a sectoral manner, but they will target, militarily and from an emergency response posture, and also the rest of society. And that means that we can't really have those watertight civil and military watersheds that we have had previously. So I think I think it's reasonable to elaborate in that direction, but I don't want to short circuit any of the discussions that are currently taking place. Thank you.
I think a word that keeps popping up is cross-sectoral, cross-purpose, cross-border. We're crossing different kinds of distinctions here. Yeah. But as we hear in all of the presentations, there's quite a huge amount of these. I mean, there's international operations, and then there's kind of national responses. There's the civil defense, there's the military defense, there are volunteers and authorities, there are different cultural differences. Mm-hmm. So how well do the learnings travel across these boundaries? Is it just enough to say that we need more cross operations, or do we actually do we need to do something to the knowledge so that it will actually transmit to another context? Johanna. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. That's a very good question, because if I can take off my hat of the director of the European Centre of Excellence for a while, I was actually working in the previous Finnish government in the foreign minister's cabinet, and it was in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And I remember when it hit, there was a lot of very tangible questions as to who is taking care of the safety in the airports, for example. And then we found out that there was at least 7-8 different agencies or ministries covering airport safety-related issues, and internal cooperation nationally between different organizations, it's an issue. And when you could take a next step to the international, beyond borders, let's say Finnish, Swedish, but also European, it needs a lot of work. It doesn't happen just by by gossiping on the corridors. It actually needs structures, cooperation structures. I think this could be considered as one of those, but it also needs strategic communication. I think that's very overlooked sometimes in these discussions, because be it how you communicate with the citizens, but how you also communicate more broadly, it needs some strategic communication planning, and that is also a field that we are looking at the European Centre of Excellence. If it goes well, the rest of the knowledge sharing and information sharing can go well. That would be my 5 cents on this topic.
Yeah.
I think just to chime in on this as well, I think whenever we want to talk or work across different boundaries and different sectoral understandings, and whenever there is a need for doing that, if you say there are 2 regimes that are intersecting like this, and then there is an in-between space, and that in-between space is often not populated by anyone, because everybody is waiting to see who will be the leader in that in-between space. And I think we need more, exactly at this juncture in time, we need more bold leaders who are able to actually jump on servant-based leadership in that in-between space that exists between 2 different regimes or boundaries or what have you. I think that's my 5 cents on this.
You want to expound what you mean on servant-based leadership?
I mean that we are the servant-based leadership is when you lead by serving the organization, or serving the purpose of the nation, or serving the purpose of the long-term goals that you want to achieve. You're not doing it because it looks good on your CV, and you're not doing it because, but you have a deeper conviction on why you're doing this. So I think that's in my view, that's what servant leadership is.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Jan, based on the assessment that you have done so far within the authority, do you have any immediate observational recommendation that can be applicable to the Finnish-Swedish cooperation, but also on a Nordic or European level? And also perhaps the same question to you, Thea, afterwards.
Thank you, Hanna, for that question. We at MTFA, we haven't really looked yet at Swedish bilateral or multilateral cooperation specifically. So I wouldn't want to make any explicit recommendations in this regard, but I think that some of our observations of the Swedish total defense system that we have reported on so far might also be relevant in a broader bilateral or multilateral context. For example, coming back to different kinds of leadership, if we found that looking at implementation of the new structure for civil defense and crisis preparedness in Sweden, we've finishing up this fall a 3-year assignment evaluating this reform. We found that if intentions stated with a reform of structures responsible for civil defense are too vaguely formulated and mandates for new actors with responsibility to coordinate or lead are too weak, components of the system will spend an inordinate amount of time interpreting what was intended and who can do what to whom. At least this has happened in Sweden. And as a result, government actors spend too much time talking to each other rather than talking to the business sector, for example, so far anyway. So we have seen that this has led to a delay in effective implementation of the reform, and responsiveness might not be as forceful as desired if the system is put to a test either. Another observation from the same study, overlap in how key actors organize geographically certainly doesn't help. Streamlining how different parts of government or countries organize geographically in peace, crisis, and in war might lead to a more robust and responsive system, although this is speculation on our part, but it would make sense, wouldn't it? Additionally, without systems that allow secure communication and sharing of critical data that are interoperable, actors in the system will be severely hampered in both planning and operations. And this, I dare say, is as true internationally as it is nationally. We also find that harmonization between Swedish national and NATO planning processes, there's work to do there. Finally, if I may, in addition to planning for wartime support, planning during peace, Swedish civil defense agencies, we find, need to put more emphasis on being able to actively support NATO deterrence operations during what we, legally speaking, would consider peacetime. All of this, of course, we report to government. We find that they listen and sometimes even act upon our advice.
Thank you. Thea, would you also like to highlight
Sometimes
some
even
observation?
act. I like it.
They may times act.
Well, as a researcher, I would like to say that there are not just military and technical questions, that there are also research challenges in resilience, governance, logistics planning, and cross-sector coordination. And I think the focus should shift towards understanding how civilian, economic, and environmental systems enable defense operations, and how such interdependence can be measured and stress-tested. And at this point, I could mention NATO research. NATO is very active. They have lots of research ongoing in many areas, and also there are many ongoing NATO research projects where Nordic countries have the main responsibility. And many research proposals are in the process. And NATO is also active in resilience research, and Finland had the main responsibility. And together with all NATO countries, they consider the future research topics related to resilience. So I think that we need more data on where are the key points and key challenges and how to solve them.
I'd like to kind of grab onto the theme of leadership, because when we talk about defense or national defense, when we talk about crisis of different kinds, crisis leadership, I feel that very often that implies a little bit of a top-down kind of somebody doing how do we create the systems of command and control, as were mentioned in the first panel. But of course, there are many systems in society, such as markets or political, the democratic political sphere, and so on, which in fact function as well as they do because nobody is leading them, or because there is not one kind of like controlling unit. So I'd like to kind of try to turn that question around. Are there some parts of society which in fact would do better if they had a little more freedom to organize themselves? I'm thinking particularly of voluntary organizations and the citizens who are yeah, sure.
So I think at least Finland, the voluntary organizations, they are very strong and very well trained, and they do support authorities. But when we talk about citizens, so I think citizens have currently the will to participate. And at this point, I would like to remind that the citizens, there are also so-called spontaneous volunteers or informal volunteers. And we saw this during the COVID-19 very clearly, and we see this in Ukraine. So they don't actually want to be maybe led by anyone. They just want to do what they want to do. And some of them want to be kind of channeled through the organizations. But this is definitely area we need to focus on and understand the huge resource and strength what the citizens and the spontaneous volunteers also include in addition to our NGOs.
And just to chime in on what Teija said, I think if you look at an organization and you take that as a point of departure, in order to have innovation in an organization, you have to have a little bit of slack, which means that people will have a little bit of freedom to think outside of the box. And I think we can run the risk of having all our programs and having all our goals and all of that, and then we don't understand that a lot of the innovative thoughts comes when we think about other things, and when we all of a sudden we combine the thinking of this area with the thinking of that area, and all of a sudden you have innovation going on. So I think that is what I would want to say, that even in an organization where the leadership is really clear, there also needs to be a certain amount of freedom to allow for that innovation to take place. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think those were good points. I just wanted to add one word, and it's trust. I mean, we saw that in the middle of the COVID pandemic, that at least I can speak about Finland, that there was quite a high level of trust in the guidance that was provided with the citizens, for example, on certain restrictions, policies, or infection rates, or vaccinations, and so on. And if there is no trust in political system or societal organization and agencies, it is much harder to lead anyone or try to steer any processes. But if you kind of like build up that trust and the institutions are strong, and they're based on fact-based information, and they are more resilient to also to guide any groups of and of course there's always this like volatility as to there always will be people who don't apply those guidances, or they want to act more freely. But I think the basis for this freedom is actually this trust, which is I think that we enjoy in the Nordic societies.
Thank you. I think there are different ways to achieve the necessary coordination of the very complex systems that we are talking about. Of course, planning and preparing for dealing with a crisis, or ultimately fighting a war at a nation state level, or as a member of an alliance, requires planning and preparation and command and control and communication systems supporting this. But there's always a risk that all these processes and systems break down I think another way of achieving coordination, I confess to having so far a fairly superficial understanding of what I understand to be some of the unique features of Finnish preparedness culture and the way you go about planning and preparing for bad times. Obviously based on hard-won historical experiences. But one thing I think that I see is a more continuous process of coming together to exercise. And I think that's something that we can bring home to Sweden, exercising more at different levels. It doesn't need, of course we need big exercises, but we can also come together for tabletop exercises at different levels of organizations and between organizations. And this kind of continuous exercising is a way, I think, to build a culture of preparedness and for the system to be able to, and the components of the system, to be able to act autonomously when command and control potentially breaks down.
Yeah.
Johanna, you mentioned in your address that many of the current EU developments is basically Nordic initiative from the start, taking inspiration from the Nordic. But a question, and perhaps if you would like to start, how strong is the Nordic club now when the bigger international formats such as the EU, NATO gain more prominence for our foreign and security policy? And also, as you mentioned, Linus, the future need for developing Nordic cooperation, not only working within sectors, but also cross sectors. Would you like to start, Johanna?
Yes, thank you. But we are members of those clubs, both of those clubs. We are in the EU, we are in the NATO now. So I think that what I hear from many representatives who are coming from the countries of whose countries have been longer time in the NATO, for example, they actually say that we make NATO stronger with the Nordic approach, that we bring this kind of new thinking and maybe this comprehensive security thinking that we have always had here, and this kind of, certain type of pragmatic approach. So I think, we are strengthening, the Nordic club is strong in those realms as well. And I think what I want to say that now when we discuss a lot of defense, and it's very understandable, and we have to discuss defense, hard security, but if we don't see the comprehensive picture, that we also need these civilian capabilities and a little bit wider understanding of security. Talking about it can be anything from environmental security or health security to maybe even cultural resilience and mental resilience. I think we are losing a big part of the picture of the comprehensive security. So we have to see the whole picture.
Thank you, Linus.
I think it depends on the level of analysis. When it comes to the EU, EU is bigger and it's more diverse and fractured in some ways, while the Nordics is fairly similar countries with similar history. And in some areas also similar languages, and I think so. I think it's easy. It would be easy for the Nordics to set an example for the rest of the EU how you work together, because we have a really good baseline for doing that. However, I also think that there are work to be done. For example, we don't have a Nordic definition on what a hybrid threat is. For example, if we mean business with doing resilience and so on, we need to get our terminology act together and speak the same language. And I know that from a research standpoint that would be excellent, right? So if we would have clear definitions of what we actually mean when we talk about things. But on an EU level, I think the Nordic has never been more relevant than now. Actually, I think now is the Nordic moment.
Sorry, do you think we will achieve this joint terminology?
I will let the researcher answer. Yes.
I have to tell you that it's a horrible term. So we have hybrid warfare, hybrid influence, hybrid threats, and so on. And I have many doctoral students who are studying this area, and in the beginning they are really happy saying that, hey, I'm studying hybrid influencing and hybrid warfare. And after 1 year they come back to me and say, is it possible that this is not the main concept of my thesis anymore? Because it is so challenging to define it. So, and that's the same challenge internationally.
And what do you tell your doctoral students?
Well, I say, of course, it's up to you that it's your not the main concept, so you don't have to define it so deeply.
Yeah, you give them a little bit of slack so that they can innovate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So we have leadership, we have mentioned data and knowledge of different levels, we have mentioned coordination, which is necessary, and trust. And of course, then a little bit of slack for all of this. Is there something missing from this picture? That was a very open-ended question. Let's see if we have something else in the cards. No, there is somebody, a brave soul. Yes, please stay.
I don't know if I'm brave, but I'm thinking that the EU power lies in regulation, standardization, and funding. And I think the rules should be tested in practice. So true preparedness means combining regulation with readiness.
I think Jan had a...
Well, thank you. I feel I need to take this opportunity to make an offer in this Nordic or Finnish-Swedish bilateral context. I mentioned that so far in our analysis and evaluations, we focused on national Swedish dimensions, and I've said that we tried to take a systemic approach to all our analysis and evaluations, and in doing so, we are reminded that nowadays, certainly Sweden and its civil, military, and total defense structures are also parts of a larger system with bilateral or multilateral connections to neighboring countries such as Finland and Norway, or communities and alliances such as EU and NATO. So to us as an agency, it would, with a mission that we have, it would make eminent sense to broaden our analysis and evaluations to include Swedish interaction with other countries or multilateral structures. And I realize that doing so is not without complications, but if there would be interest, we would be fully prepared to discuss topics and practicalities, and we would be very happy if our analysis or our evaluations could, for example, help to further improve or accelerate the build-up of joint mission capabilities or mutual support structures and processes that have been agreed, for example, between Finland and Sweden.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a quick comment on that. I really like what you said about trilateral, and maybe beyond even trilateral EU cooperation. If you think of the EU preparedness and readiness strategy, it is a strategy, but then my question is always when I read the story, then what? How is the implementation done? And actually, when it comes to the EU issues, generally, it is up to the member states. The power is in the member states. And if, for example, the Nordics take a lead or initiative in certain things, they do have certain leeway. And that's, I think, a positive thing.
Did you want to add?
I wanted to say something about that preparedness and so on is built throughout the society. I was thinking about the NATO version of civil resilience that is, as far as I understand it, in the NATO context, the civil preparedness is for supporting the military option. And I think that we might be a little blind to this because we need to build resilience regardless of the military option, and I think that is really key. And I really loved what Johanna ended with saying, that the future is civil, the future is not military. The military is for an emergency. and it's really important, and we should really prepare and arm ourselves. But we should also remember that really good resilience is also a deterrent in itself. It heightens the cost of any adversary to attack us. So that's what I wanted to conclude with saying.
Thank you. Before we open up for one or two questions from the audience, Mikael, Frisell and Petteri Korvala, we asked them in the beginning of this conference about what is lagging or key investments that are still missing. Short answer from you, and you can pick if you choose the national level or Nordic or European level. What would you say? What key investments are now missing or actions that we need to focus on?
This is a very easy question for me. More investments at the national level for civilian crisis management capabilities, and more experts to be deployed to the missions. There's a lot of empty positions.
Good.
A hint to everyone here. Thank you.
Thea?
Well, as a researcher, I of course say that more focus on research and especially during these exercises, joint exercises. So we should have more study on how everything is ongoing during the research and learn from that.
Thank you. Well, coming from Sweden, and speaking of investments, I could not say at this time that we are lacking for money, and I think from our perspective with the mission that we have, I think making sure that given the strain on the system, that investments are still carried out in a cost-effective manner. But speaking of investment. And I take inspiration from Finland here, and I echo some of the comments from Mikael. I think Sweden needs to invest more in building a culture of preparedness, a broader culture, and also to invest more in cooperation between government and the business sector. And finally, just to build on Linus's comments, I think that the future is total. Thank you.
That was very nice. Yeah, great.
Do we have some questions from the audience? Yes, I see two hands and one standing up.
Okay.
Yes, you that stand up, please
just
go ahead. And we have microphones, so should have a microphone close to you.
Somewhere nearby.
Or nearby, yes. And just press the button there.
Yes.
Perfect, go ahead.
Thank you very much. When talking about cooperation between Finland and Sweden, now stand on both feet here, there's something that I'm a little bit missing, and that is something that a brochure that was issued some 4 or 5 years ago, or 2018, to all the households in Sweden. If the crisis or the war is coming, and it was published in it was sent to 5 million households in Sweden. And when I have been in connection with the Swedish embassy and so else, I got even the second one, a follow-up 2 years ago. There is a difference between Finland and Sweden, because when I raise these questions, they say you can push a button and look at the net. I'm not telling anybody what my age is, but I have pushed many buttons, but I have not been successful so far.
Thank you. Is someone of you would like to start about the Finnish perspective? And also you mentioned, Johanna, about home preparedness, for example, mentioned in the EU unit strategy, but EU preparedness unit strategy. But Teija?
Well, no comment on the Finnish solution, but I like to mention how they have done it in Estonia. So they have an application called Ole Valmis, be ready. So, and that's for all the citizens, and every one of you can upload it and see what it includes. But it's also needs in cases of crisis, we may have not so much electric, so paper version might be better.
I hope that someone maybe from Finland, some real expert could correct me, but I do recall that there was some kind of a leaflet published also in Finland regarding how to prepare for certain crisis situations like storing supplies at home, water, and so on. So that it hasn't been completely absent from Finland either.
No, that's correct.
Next question. Another question.
Another question, yes, here on the fourth row here.
Thank you, Anders Gardberg. I have almost 40 years cooperation or experience for cooperation of Swedish-Finnish cooperation, and my question is that you speak a lot of planning, but if you go back 5 years when COVID erupted, in days everything was forgotten and everybody took their own national decisions. How would you make sure that it doesn't happen again?
Good question. Who would like to start?
So, one project that we have initiated is to have a look at the sort of framework legislation between the different Nordic countries when it comes to preparedness. So, what happens if we have a hybrid threat that comes to multiple nations at the same time, and everyone is activating their crisis legislation? What happens? How many hindrances would there be if all of those were activated? And are there, by looking at them now, when it's kind of peace and quiet, are there things that we could already now see that this will result in so much pain unnecessarily, and what could we do in order to make the Nordic work efficiently and smoothly, even in a time of crisis? So that is actually one very concrete action that we have initiated on the Nordic Council of Ministers.
I just had a fantastic slogan last week in one other type of panel on water security, and someone, I think it was a Dutch military person who said that we have to meet together before we need each other. So we have to have this type of structures or cooperation mechanisms, information sharing together before something hits the fan, and that is really important. I think that the COVID was a really good example because at the same time when it happened, really, also national agencies were kind of trying to find a way to communicate with each other. When it comes to the EU level, it needs even elevated processes so that this type of networking can happen. There's structures in place when something happens. When something happens, it can happen so quickly that there's not many hours to have further planning, but there has to be a way to meet quickly, to discuss quickly. And COVID was I don't say it was a good thing, but something that kind of came from COVID was that, for example, EU political meetings and institutions, they found a way to have organized video conferences. But this is just one really mundane example. But we have to meet each other before we need each other.
Thank you. Well, there's always a risk of naked self-interest in times of severe crisis. But I like to think that although we have, as an agency, haven't studied this explicitly, I like to think that as countries and as multilateral systems, we've learned lessons from the pandemic, and I also think that one very good way of ensuring that we don't fall into the same behavior again is, of course, government accords, etc. But it's also the kind of networks and trust that Hanaholmen builds through the training courses that you have gone through, where you build personal relationships, and I think that's very important in ensuring the ability to coordinate in times of crisis, but also the willingness to help each other in times of crisis.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Yes, go ahead, the lady in the pink jacket here.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy you gave me the floor. And I would like to thank Johanna for being here and bringing up my subject. My name is Elizabeth Naukle, and I'm the Honorary Consul of Moldova, so far the first and only in Finland. And it's so seldom that Moldova is brought up, so I'm so happy you came here. You have paid so much efforts. There's so much effort done by you. But I have a very specific question. How can you get Finland to take a more active role on Moldova? There is a lot of European cooperation, there is a lot of efforts done in Sweden, but I think that Finland could do more. Finland is very engaged in Ukraine, which is understandable, but just because of that, Moldova think that Finland is such a trustworthy partner that they would like them to have more engaged. And I think we are quite naive when it comes to the European Union accession and believing that Moldova would come in with the unsolved Transnistria in the way that Cyprus did. I don't think that is that easy. So that was very specific question to Johanna.
Johanna, yes.
Thank you for asking this. I would like to talk about Moldova for 1 hour if I could, but maybe I have some Moldovan contacts, friends, and they always remind me that everybody talks in Europe that how Moldova is threatened by outside, but actually Moldova is threatened from within. So there's a lot of disinformation, internal disruption, polarization in the society that needs to be addressed, and that is if there's that is not addressed, there's no resilience within the society. And they always remind also about the citizen level connections and also interest in Moldovan democracy and elections. And of course the EU partnership mission, that is, I believe, I cannot say because I'm not the one who plans that, but I believe that in the future there might be even more opportunities to address certain things. Same with Ukraine, actually. There's a lot of discussion about hybrid cyber and FIMI in Ukraine. And what they're now facing in Moldova and Ukraine, they are already dealing with it. Very tremendously, and we can learn from them as well. We can learn from Moldovians and we can learn from Ukrainians how to counter hybrid and cyber threats and FIMI.
And speaking of learning from each other, the participants and of course also networking, the participants in this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Executive Education have written a report, and the report is available here in physical form today. Not digitally, but physically. So please remember to grab one in the break.
And with those words, we would like to thank our panelists for this great discussion. Thank you, Jan, Johanna, Teija, and Linus. Thank you. Thank you.
Kiitos paljon. Hyvät juontajat.
Then, before, just some information about the break. There's coffee here on the second floor. Please be back 10 minutes past 10, so we can start sharp a 11:15.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you had a very refreshing break. And you didn't drink too much coffee so that you're not jittering in your seat. We are moving on to session 2 in the program, which is titled The Role of Individual Citizens in Societal Resilience. And of course, a topic that we have a little bit been touching upon in the earlier panels, in the earlier presentations, but now we're going to do a deep dive into this topic. And to set the stage, we have 2 representatives of government. First, we will hear some remarks from Finland's Minister of the Interior, Mari Rantanen, and then we will hear some remarks from the State Secretary to the Swedish Minister of Civil Defense, Johan Berggren. So it's my great pleasure to first welcome up to the stage Minister Rantanen.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests and colleagues, it's my great honor to be here today and take part of this important summit. The security situation in Europe is more serious and difficult to predict than ever. This change is expected to be long-lasting and emphasize the importance of society's crisis resilience even more than before. Today's threats are more and more complex and often cross-border. That's why learning from each other and sharing best practices when it comes to preparedness is an important form of cooperation, which this seminar is a very good example of. It is important to learn from Ukraine. We know that even if there is a war going on, civil society must function. People need to be able to work and children attend to school. The infrastructure must be functional. The task of the authorities is to ensure the protection of the population in all situations. Preparedness is built from bottom up, at the grassroots level, by every firefighter and police officer. We must understand that one of the key lessons learned from Ukraine is that citizens are the backbone of all preparedness. Their knowledge, ability, and willingness to act in different disruptions and crises is of utmost importance. Increasing citizens' knowledge builds trust in the authorities and makes hostile hybrid influencing more difficult. According to Ukraine experiences, it is important to train citizens' preparedness skills in peacetime, also for the war. Ladies and gentlemen, preparedness is a normal part of everyday life in Finland, not something separate. We have a long tradition of preparedness. Already during the last war, people understood how important it is to be ready and take care of themselves. In 2017, Finland introduced 72 hours concept, which means that everyone should be ready to manage on their own for 3 days if something unexpected happens. A good guideline in this regard is that citizens must be prepared for 72 hours and the authorities for 72 days. Studies show that we are fairly well prepared, but in reality, many of us still have work to do. It's worth asking, would I manage during the long power outage? Do I have enough food, batteries, or plan what I do if things don't return to normal in few days? These may seem like simple questions, but they matter. Thinking about them helps us take a real practical step toward better preparedness. And in crisis, even small steps can make a big difference. In Finland, trust in public authorities is among the highest in the world. This strong trust is a good thing, but it can also lead to the belief that help will always be available, no matter what happens. During major emergencies or widespread disruptions, authorities must focus their efforts where help is needed most. They simply cannot assist everyone at the same time. Preparedness is not something we can leave for later. It's something each of us must do in advance. In a crisis, help will go first those in greatest need, and the rest of us must be ready to manage on our own. Here, there is still room for improvement. We all have personal responsibility to prepare. According to the Constitution of Finland, every Finnish citizen who have turned 18 have a duty to defend their country. It's called the National Defense Obligation. Male citizens complete military service or non-military civil service, and women can apply for military service in a voluntary basis. It is important to note that under the current legislation, Finland have provisions for civil defense duties. Under Finland's Emergency Powers Act, in times of emergency, all residents aged 18 to 67 with a registered municipality in Finland may be required to participate in civil defense duties. These duties include, for example, firefighting, rescue operations, first aid, clearing and cleaning tasks, or other essential activities necessary to protect the population. Finns are known for their strong will to defend their country. This should not be taken for granted. It is important to emphasize that each one of us, each citizens, have an important role to play in ensuring that we are well prepared for all kinds of emergencies. Preparedness, it is not just a policy, it is mindset. When that mindset is shared at all levels by citizens, by authorities, civil society, and private sector, we are stronger together. Let us continue to build that resilience together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mari Rantanen. I have a short follow-up question to you. We often highlight in Finland and Sweden that civil society and local communities have resilience on their own. But what would you say is the most added value that formal association, but also institutions, can bring to really mobilize this willingness to participate?
Well, we can start from that fact that we can start from that fact that Finnish are looking this issue from this comprehensive security model, which means that our citizens, our authorities, our private sector, and the organizations are working together with all this preparedness thing too. So I think that for doing this kind of system, it's much more better than, for example, associations are working up by their own. But I think that it's highly important because in Finland we have a lot of organizations based on voluntary working, and I think that there is a lot of potential which we might use more. I take, for example, those who is concentrating on mental health. So they are very crucial that they will bring all this preparedness thing to their own work. And using, for example, our these preparedness guidelines, which we published in last year.
Thank you so much, Mari Rantanen, the Minister of the Interior of Finland. Thank you. Thank you. And now we will hear remarks from the State Secretary to the Swedish Minister of Civil Defense. A warm welcome up, Johan Berggren.
Dear Minister Rantanen, dear Gunvor, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to be here at Hanaholmen, a historic site and a symbol of the close ties between our two great countries. My own relationship to Hanaholmen goes back over a decade to 2013, when I had the honor of being part of the first cohort of the so-called Tandem Leadership Program, bringing together Finnish and Swedish participants here at Hanaholmen. And I'm actually delighted this is my third visit as State Secretary to Hanaholmen, so it's a place I keep on coming back to, and I so appreciate being invited back in different ways. So Finland is, and has for a long time, been one of our closest neighbors and allies. Our relationship is a long-term commitment characterized by trust, loyalty, and affinity. We have a shared security policy perspective, and our common values are directly linked to security and defense. Together, we stand strong, ready to face the dire security situation, prepared for quick and sudden changes. We need to stay alert at all times because the Baltic Sea region is one of the areas where Russia continues to test NATO's commitment and resolve. We must make sure that the Baltic Sea region is in good hands. A robust and resilient society is at the core of a country's national defense. Civil preparedness is a central pillar of Allies' resilience and a critical enabler for the alliance's collective defense. This is why Sweden is now undertaking the largest rearmament for our total defense since the end of the Second World War. For civil defense, this means that the funding will increase about sevenfold in the 2022 to 2028 period, from about 250 million euros to almost 1.75 billion per year. We are building a strong and robust civil defense from national level to regional and municipal levels. We are doing it together with the EU and our allies in NATO, with government agencies, country administrative boards, private enterprises, civil society, and voluntary defense organizations. At the core of society's resilience lies the resilience of the individual. We see it most clearly in Ukraine, where the Ukrainian people are bravely resisting Russian aggression, not only on the front line, but also in their daily lives, by rescuing people from missile attacks on buildings, by repairing damaged infrastructure, by continuing to teach children in the schools, and ultimately by going to work and continue to uphold the vital functions of society. It is impossible not to be impressed by their courage and determination. We are reminded that if we want to live in freedom and democracy, we must be prepared to defend these values. Freedom is never free. The message from the Swedish government is crystal clear. We have high expectations of our citizens. We expect them to adhere to the guidelines and checklists provided in the brochure in case of crisis or war. All Swedes who do not usually need support from our society are expected to be prepared to take care of themselves for at least 1 week in a crisis or war scenario without any support from society. Support can then be focused to those who need it the most. That is why home preparedness is also an important act of solidarity with your country and society. The cognitive domain also plays a key role in building societal resilience. This is why we emphasize the meaning of psychological defense. Swedish agencies such as the Psychological Defense Agency and the Swedish Agency for the Media have been tasked to raise awareness and inform the public about the risks stemming from disinformation and malign interference. Individual citizens need to have the tools to recognize and refute malign information campaigns and disinformation. An informed and educated population is a resilient population. Media literacy plays a key role here. We also see the need to spread knowledge and lessons learned in Sweden and other countries facing similar challenges and threats. The EU Democracy Shield will be important in this regard. Each member state, as well as partner countries such as Moldova and Ukraine, brings unique strengths and perspectives which will be key to shielding Europe's democracy. A unified and collaborative approach will help raise the baseline of psychological defense and democratic resilience across the EU. As a Swedish citizen, you are entitled to many benefits and you have far-reaching rights, but you also have many obligations. One such obligation, very similar to the Finnish one we just heard, is that everyone who lives in Sweden has a duty to contribute to Sweden's total defense from the year in which they turn 16 until they reach 70 years of age. Total defense duty can be fulfilled through either military conscription, civil conscription, or general national service. Civil conscription has not been activated for many years, but since January 2024, conscription of civilians has been implemented for the rescue services and in the area of supply of electricity. The experiences from Ukraine show that preparedness in these areas is crucial in the event of war, and that is also why the government has chosen to activate these two areas first in what we call a fast-track methodology or fast-track approach. A first step to strengthen the staffing of municipal rescue services in times of heightened preparedness is to enroll individuals who already have skills relevant to municipal rescue services. However, there's also need for civil duty after conscription to meet the demand for additional personnel. So far, around 1,900 individuals have been assigned a wartime posting in the rescue services. Around 300 have also completed rehearsal training in 2024, and in 2025, that number will grow to about 1,000 individuals. Conscription is a matter of defending Sweden's long-standing peace, freedom, and democracy, ensuring that Sweden is and remains a sovereign country. Conscription is also a unique and powerful tool. I understand and respect that there is a difference between on the one hand, fulfilling your military duty when you have just finished high school, and on the other hand, being pulled out of your daily life and ordinary job later in life to fulfill civil conscription for 10 or 20 days as part of rescue services or in the area of supply of electricity. It is, of course, a sacrifice, both in terms of time away from your family and job, and as a loss of income, which you will not be fully compensated for. But we must remember, as we said, that freedom always comes at a cost. And this system is not yet perfect, but time is of the essence, which is why we have to build the airplane while flying it. Civil conscripts able to repair electricity systems may, when push comes to shove, be the ones who make all the difference between literally darkness and light. One final area of the role of individual citizens in societal resilience is the power of the 380,000 Swedes that are active in our 18 voluntary defense organizations. They are very important for providing training, concrete aid and support. And in the words of my boss, Minister Carl-Oskar Bolin, they were the true unsung heroes during the strategic timeout, or the so-called short-lived end of history. They remained committed while most of society turned away, most of Swedish society. In Finland, of course, you remained vigilant all the time. In addition, civil society comprises of approximately 160,000 non-profit organizations. They can assist the public sector in managing various types of crises, both at a local and national level. Civil society organizations often identify needs and begin to mobilize early when society faces major challenges. They have the ability to mobilize resources and volunteers. They can quickly adapt and adjust their operations, and they can also assist in spreading information and knowledge. And so by promoting dialogue and collaboration between different actors, civil society can also contribute to increased trust in society, which ultimately increases the will to defend. And the aggregated engagement of the Swedish population is reflected in the fact that the will to defend the country in the event of a war is higher in Sweden than in many other countries. Not Finland, but many others. And surveys show that a vast majority say that they are prepared to participate in various tasks within the total defense system based on their ability and skills. This is an important prerequisite and a cornerstone in building our resilience. I would like to conclude my remarks by quoting the beginning of Charles Dickens' novel from 1859, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Right here, right now, all of us have the ability to contribute to our society's resilience, turning darkness into light and turning winter of despair into a spring of hope. And in these dark days, we mustn't lose hope. Quite the opposite. We should be optimistic about our abilities to overcome the challenges facing us. In Finland and in Sweden and across the West, we have built some of the most successful societies in the history of mankind. We should be proud of those achievements, and we should feel strong and confident about our abilities in meeting an uncertain future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, State Secretary, for your insightful remarks. In the interests of both sustainability and innovation, I will ask you almost the same question as we asked Minister Rantanen, which is that you mentioned, as was mentioned, the civil society and the local communities and society as a whole has a very strong resilience in itself. But quite a lot of institutions and different kinds of structures are being built around this. So how do you ensure that all these different structures provide like a total added value in some and don't work at cross purposes?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think it really is about being able to balance what you would call top-down activities or initiatives with bottom-up. And there is some challenge in that, in coordinating large organizations, large bureaucracies, or all the agencies in our society. And that's why sometimes we say, managing the military defense is much easier than managing the civil defense, because the military defense is only 5 or 8 agencies, whereas the civil defense, as Mikael well knows, is hundreds of agents literally in all our population. We sometimes say it's the 97.5% of GDP that's not the military GDP. Soon that'll be 97, and soon it'll be 96.5 as we build up our military. But no, it requires a lot of engagement and coordination, and there probably is some overlap, and there will be some duplication. But if in general, in a sort of a net effect, will be positive. And I'm very convinced of that.
Great. Thank you so much, State Secretary, for your remarks.
And our next panel goes under the heading Perspective on Society and Resilience. And we have a very distinguished and broad-based panel to guide us into this topic. We're very happy to welcome up on the stage Kimmo Kovaka, the Director General for Rescue Services at the Ministry of the Interior of Finland. Krister Pursiainen, a Professor of Societal Security at the University of Tromsø. Welcome up. Then we have Peter Bennesved, researcher at FOI, the Swedish Defence Research Agency. And last but not least, Gunilla Svantorp, Governor of the County of Östergötland. A warm welcome.
All right, welcome to the stage. And I'd like to aim the first question at Kimmo and Gunilla, actually. So you as let's say, practitioners in this field, what do the terms societal security and societal resilience, what do they mean in the daily work of your authorities? Kimmo,
should I start? Yeah.
Let's go.
Thank you very much for the being very proud to be here, and thank you for the Minister and Secretary, State Secretary, for the inspiring openings. I will be a little bit, how to say, blunt when saying that the public awareness, the public self-preparedness is the cornerstone, stated very many times already here, but that really is something because it involves all, how to say, actors also. If the public is, how to say, feeling confident of their skills and the awareness of, how to say, the situation and reacting accordingly, that gives us all different organizations the basis of our preparedness as a whole. And the second one being the mentioned also already here, the trust. I think that the societal resilience is really a big question of trust of self-preparedness, trust of authorities, trust of the society in a whole, the legal system, the democracy, and so forth, already stated here. So I think those are the basis and the building blocks to the practical work that we do. Thank you.
Yeah, I would also like to thank you for being here. It's nice. I think we are constantly working on maintaining the ability in the county. And also in the county administrative board establish a function that is constantly standby. We have a wartime organization already, and we work a lot about with our leadership. We have a coordinator that force the leaders to be able to lead in wartime, and we do it, and we also do exercises with all the county. Last week, for example, we have the whole county, the municipalities, the police and rescue and so on, and also the military. And we have exercise together, and we discussed, we were in wartime that time. And we have exercise weeks twice a year, and that's very important to meet and to increase the trust, the cooperation between many actors. I think that's key word for success. Thank you.
So trusting each other allows us to work together, and working together makes us trust each other.
Krister and Peter, from a researcher's perspective, is societal security or resilience a clearly defined concept, would you say? And how has this developed during the last couple of years? Peter, do you want to start?
So I tried the idea of saying yes to that question. But I guess you're not expecting that, right? It would be fantastic if we could just put societal resilience in some kind of AI and get products out of it, but it doesn't work that way. From a researcher perspective, I would say that it's not a very useful concept for me in my daily work, and it's because it's more of a political project. We want healthcare, we want good climate, we want a lot of things in society. We also want societal resilience. It's a goal we have to measure against whatever threat perception we are thinking about now. So from a researcher perspective, it's not very useful in that way. Personally, I work with civil defense or befolkningsskydd in Swedish, and that's more of a, categorized, more easily categorized with specific functions and specific concepts that you can study and measure in some way. So, and the second part of that question, how it has developed, I think that there are some interesting things about this. Perhaps you can say more about this later, but as I see it, this societal resilience is a concept that's been growing out of the crisis management period that we've been living through now for a couple of decades, and it does not really include the things that we've been hearing now. Johanna and Mari told us about expectations of the individual, about duties and demands for what individual civilians should be doing for the state, and that freedom comes with a price. And I would say that societal resilience as a concept that we've been studying, as I see it, it doesn't really include that. It's more of a crisis preparedness concept, and perhaps we should talk more about societal defense or societal resistance, perhaps, because we're expecting individuals not to be just resilient. We are expecting them to resist something, a strategic intent. That is a major difference, a major change that we have seen since the start of this full-scale invasion. And I stop there.
Krista.
Thank you, Hanna. Well, I see the thing a little bit differently. Well, resilience is not a new concept. It's about 300 or 400. It started in metallurgy. The idea about material studies that the strongest is not necessarily the most resilient. And the point was that if you have, for example, a very solid metal thing, so when you use enough force, also it breaks down. And if it is a resilient metal, then it bounces back. And that's the whole idea. Then when it came to became popular starting from 1970s and 1980s in first in ecological resilience thinking and then in psychology. So it was changing a little bit the meaning. It was not only bouncing back but also adaptation. It means that instead of like typical risk management or deterrence, so you expect something, the adversity to take place, and then you have to cope with it, and then you have to adapt. So imagine climate change. So you cannot bounce back it. We have to. We speak about climate adaptation, therefore, and perhaps psychological issues are similar. So if a close person of you dies, so you never come back in a way from the sorrow, but you cope and then you adapt to that new reality. So I think it is very useful. It's a systemic concept. It includes before, during, and after a crisis, but unlike typical crisis management, which is also before, during, and after crisis recovery. So it's a systemic, not operational concept. So it's kind of an inbuilt thing, and it includes both withstanding, both responding, both recovery if possible, and adaptation to some kind of new reality if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I feel like there is a lot of reference back to like resilience that we used to have, and the things that events and cultural memory of different things that we have gone through and so on. But then on the other hand, as you also all bring up, many things have changed. Climate change is an ongoing environmental change all the time. So are we rebuilding resilience, or are we building resilience? Are we making something new, or are we rediscovering something that we already had?
Okay, well, I think that, this is an interesting question, because we often, especially in the Nordic countries, we measure our sort of level of preparedness against what we had during the good old civil defense days of the Cold War. And the Cold War becomes sort of a romanticized past that we measure everything against. But we have to remember that, at least in the Swedish case, we reformed our civil defense at least 3 times, maybe even 4, depending on how you measure reform, right? But so you have to ask then, what past are you talking about? And I think this question is, and that point is very important to make, because we are tending to sort of almost fetishize something that we had, and we measure the political success against a romanticized past. And I think we have to get away from that and start looking at the actual preconditions that we are living in today, and what is possible to produce in this environment that we're living in, and not trying to mimic something that was. I think that's
Gunilla and then Kimmo.
Yes, I think we have to do both build new and look what did work back in times, because some needs are timeless. For example, logistics and reserves building or something like that. But this war that we see today is different because we have these cyber attacks, and we see in Ukraine lack of respect, for example, for Geneva Convention. They are bombing hospitals and so on. So it's a new time, and we have to look at that. We have also the digital dependency, and we have hybrid threats today. And we also have these global supply chains. So it's a lot of new things that we have to look at. But we also did good things back in the year, so we have to look at that.
Yeah, I come to very excellent points here. I come to one practical example. In our case, we just reach 30-year mark on a school kids, 8th graders, security and safety competition called No Hata, and 30 years and 1 million 8th graders. And all that 30 years time, there's been also everyday hazards and situations, and also the civil defense situation, like using civil defense shelter and so forth. So it's been there. But absolutely agree on the colleagues over here that now when we study on Ukraine, for instance, there's a new features, new kinds of, details in preparedness, what we should do and find out. We've been studying now for the self-preparedness and saw that there's a lack of water preparedness, for instance. That is one key issue if you want to have a, let's say, good self-preparedness in a household. We studied also what is the situation at the moment. 1 year ago, 41% of Finns considered themselves to be well prepared. This year, the same number was 54%. 85% of Finns thinks that the self-preparedness is very important, but still they perhaps are not, let's say, complying. One of the reasons may be, our minister said that, are they relying too much on the authorities? And what is the meaning of that? We totally see that there's a difference also in the Finnish society. Youth in urban areas, in a refrigerator, there's a banana and half a beer. And on the countryside, there's a, how to say, normal countryside household with they can provide themselves for 6 months and no need for discuss with authorities. So there's a big differences also in Finnish societal resilience. Thank you.
As we have representatives both from the national and regional level, and I know, Kimmo, you are also leading the regional preparedness of Finland from your department at the Ministry of the Interior. But starting first from a research perspective, and then Kimmo and Gunilla, does coordination work between these different levels, so national and regional level of government work today? Here, and if not, what would you say is missing currently? Rebuilding or continue to building up our preparedness structures?
Krista, this one's yours.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Hanna. Yeah, that's, if we speak about total defense, there is a concept which is very practical for this, is multi-level governance. And we have at least on domestic level, we have the government, we have regional, and then we have municipalities, so local level. And then we have also the transnational, which would be EU and NATO. So if we speak about that domestic government versus regional level, so that is a little bit differently organized in, for example, in Sweden and in Finland. So that reform that you did in Sweden a couple of years ago, and creating those total defense districts or regions. So it actually decentralized the system to the regional level, but centralized it from municipalities to regional level. I would say so. So the regions have. Especially in a crisis situation, I think my interpretation is they would have a lot of power in Sweden. Finland has always been a little bit much, or not a little bit, much more top-down system, and I'm not quite sure that whether that is kind of has changed. I think that it is still top-down. The Finnish Security Council committee is, there are not many regional level representatives, it's national level, and then it tells to the other levels what to do, even to the civil society that you should do that, then you get money.
Just a short note on that one. I think that, as you said, you have to remember that the Nordic countries are very different in this area, how they are organized. So it's difficult to say something generic about this topic. But from a Swedish perspective, I would say that it seems to me that municipalities are very good at organizing crisis preparedness, because crisis preparedness doesn't include that strategic component and doesn't include war as a problem in that way. But when it comes down to civil defense, I think that municipalities are absolutely struggling to make sense of how to cope with that. And it's not weird. I mean, how could you expect a municipality to make clear analytical choices, about probabilities of war? That's a state issue. States make war with each other. Municipalities do not. So I think that's a problem we have ahead.
Well, yeah, thank you for the points. I think I take a little bit from the State Secretary Bergqvist's saying that in a Western democracy, in our juridical system, that is something that is embedded, that each and everyone has their own legislation, they have their own organizations, they have their own, particular task, and it will always be difficult to coordinate. There's no coordination. Dictatorship, it could be something like that, but in a Western democracy, we have to live with that, and also rely on that the different organizations do their best on the same goal, and therefore You mentioned that we are more top-down. Well, it may sometimes seem so, but I think that we rely on very much both citizens, the third sector, the organizations in the volunteer sector, and municipalities, and regional authorities, and the governmental state council level is there to trying to understand what is happening, and then create a sense of what is the situation and where should we all together go in that path. And therefore our comprehensive security system, the idea that also the permanent state secretary and of course the government looks the whole of the society approach and tries to navigate through the difficult perhaps the situation and so forth. I'm not a believer that more detailed coordination could be the answer, because that perhaps neglects the sector's own skills and understanding of the situation. And no one is better on their own tasking than the organizations themselves in their surroundings and seeing what kind of a threat scenario. So it's the basic common understanding of the threats and the support to that we have to manage together and work together. Not only cooperation, but work together. That's the key. Thank you.
Gunilla. Yeah, and I think also that the meeting places between the regional level and the national level, as Mikael told about before, it's very, very important. But also that we from the municipalities and the regional level give the right message to Mikael, who is the person who often meets the national level. But the most important things, I think, is that the regional level must be able to assist in coordination in the region, because everything happens where people live. So we have to be able to coordinate. So more joint training is very important, but also new things like that we could share platform for situational planning and so on. It's very, very important that we have the same picture.
I can't help but think about that. Is it possible that there is a bit of a tension between the idea that every organization knows their own operating environment the best, and the idea that we have coordination and joint threat pictures? Because if we had perfect coordination, perfect plans, and a completely joint threat picture, is it not possible that we have all prepared for the wrong threats? Is there an element of innovation also in the idea that you let different actors operate in the field that they know best? Ooh, that was the wrong question. Two. Okay.
What do you think?
Pressing silence.
Yeah. Short answer, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
But there might be tension. But that's important that we have that tension, because then there's a critical, let's say, view to that in that question. For instance, that are we, facing the same threat or understanding the threat the same? And then there's an obligation to use each and every organizations and sectors expertise on interpreting what is happening and what kind of a needs there is. So there are and there will be a tension in that, but I think that the beauty of it, and it comes, and therefore we are perhaps stronger than in those countries where it's direct that okay, this is the truth, quite understandably. Thank you.
You want to name some countries, or
I guess say something about it. I think that of course there are tensions all over the place in all dimensions, and there's tensions between short events and planning for them for crisis preparedness situations and the long-term situations that war can be, and that's a huge difference in the tension there as well. And there's also a tension between sort of the decentralized management model, where you expect people to be flexible and independent, and that requires a lot of leadership, a lot of visionary producing goals, and on the other hand, a centralized management structure which just everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to, but you have very little flexibility. And that is really the big difference here between on municipality level and the more state existential threats type of situations where the state needs to be more on their toes.
Christer?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, that tension thing. I think that even Marx is not very popular today, but it had the very good starting point. Look at the tensions, look at the conflict always, and then you find something. And if we look from tensions, so there are many representatives of companies, perhaps critical infrastructure companies and so on. So there is a certain tension there. It's not only public-private partnership. The companies are usually willing to do public-private partnership because they want to avoid regulation. So they have to find the right balance between them. And I'm sure that private actors are as patriotic as anyone else, but they think the logic is different. They do not want to put too much funding to something that they think that is too damaging for their profit making, which is the basic idea. The same goes with civil society. Most of the civil society organizations are not voluntary paramilitary training. They are actually something quite different. And they are very careful about defending their own autonomy. So the tension here is that how much is the state in the crisis situation trying to mobilize the society, co-opting it instead of working in partnership as they wanted. So that is the tension, and if one does not take those tensions seriously, so then it might go wrong and polarize the whole system.
Yeah, that's why joint exercises is so important, I think, because when we have those, we have what we call in Sweden, I can't find the English word for skav. What do you say? Friction, yes. And when the friction, when we have solved the friction and get the same picture of where should we go, then we have the same picture and we go for the same goal. So I think more joint exercises.
Thank you so much, Gunilla, Christer, Peter, Kimmo, for your participation. Now we have to move on to the final session of this summit. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And this final session is named public, very opportunely from going from this conversation to the next one. It's called Public-Private Partnership in Comprehensive Security, and it includes the conclusions from this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Executive Education. So lest we forget that the executive education course has been going on far before this summit. In fact, the last piece of work was a workshop yesterday evening when some key takeaways were finalized. So to hear what the course, the executive education program, has actually come up with, we now turn to the participants themselves. And to represent the course of 24 individuals in total, we have a small panel with a participant from each country, as well as one of the Norwegian observers, which was a special feature of this year's course. So with these words, we are happy to welcome to the stage Johan Sjöberg, who is Director of Security and Defense Policy at the Confederation of Swedish Enterprise, Minna Ruolanto, who is Head of Preparedness and Risk Management at the city of Porvoo, or Borgo in Swedish, and Dag Olav Högvold, who is Head of the International Relations Department at the Norwegian Directorate for Civil Protection. And you may take the stage here, and well, I think you have your internal order all sorted out, so I'll just leave it to you to tell us what are the key takeaways from this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Executive Education.
All right, thank you so much. And first of all, I would like to, on behalf of the students, thank Gunvor for having and hosting us here today, and also for the excellent program that I think we all have appreciated very much to attend. I think has been a very good journey in order to have a new network and also to discuss these kind of issues. So thank you so much. Also thank you for the ones who actually decided to appoint us for this program. We don't know why, but we're grateful for that as well. So thank you so much. To start with a little bit on the private, I would like to make one remark though. When we talk about, we talk about the private-public partnership, but I haven't seen one representative from the business community on this stage until now. And I think that is sort of a little bit, I think, a recommendation that bring them up. Otherwise, it does deviate a little bit from how the reality looks like out there. So I think that's just a small recommendation. I will give you some remarks then on from the business side, and also on behalf then of all the papers that you all have read now, I'm sure, in detail. But I think one conclusion that we have made for sure is that a key is to understand how the business community works and how company works. Because if you the economic viability of a company is a prerequisite for a sustainable and resilient society. The statistics in Sweden, for example, 80% of the value of GDP comes from the private sector. 70% of everyone working in Sweden works for private companies. 50% of the export of the GDP comes from export. We won't find one single company who's not dependent on international trade. And we also have in all our countries and also in Norway, all sectors which are critical for the resilience of the society are dependent on private companies. I think a lot has happened. I think that we all, in our discussions, have the same view that Finland has come further because you still have the system. We don't have a system. We are now recreating a system in new conditions, and I think we do it in a remarkable fast speed, which is quite good. But still, I would like to, Christer, I don't see you in the lighter, but I think you made some good remarks. You talked about metals, which needs to bounce back. Companies needs to have ability to bounce back. If they don't bounce back, they won't be able to actually deliver the kind of support that we need for the society. And that comes, of course, with less regulations. We need to make sure that they have the right provisions to be as competitive as possible. But it also means that we need to find a new way to actually share information between the public and private side. That is one of our key conclusions as well. We need to make sure that we have more exercises, that we have an integrated approach where we actually bring in the business community into the circles. We still tend to discuss very much from a government side and an authority side that this is what we are doing, and then we need to bring in the business community. But the business community is already there. They are the basic for everything we do in a society, and that needs to be understood in a different way in order to have a more integrated approach.
So, first takeaway, bring in the business community.
Bring in the business community.
Thank you very much.
And bounce back.
And bounce back.
Okay, thank you. Another thing that we were discussing quite a lot was the importance of dialogue, that we are not always just pushing our perspectives to the table and just try to sort of get everybody else understand what we want, but also bring back and sort of see where we are, what are the needs for information, for example. What do I really need? Where do I stand? What do I need? Because obviously we also are struggling from information overload, and also in hybrid warfare, information is also used against us. So we were emphasizing also building and strengthening the foundations of democracy, trusting editor-led media, and trusting research, and this defining what we really actually mean by information when we say that we need information for situational awareness and to support decision making. What do we really mean by information?
So second takeaway, keep the dialogue going.
And third takeaway is about collaboration. We've been discussing collaboration across sectors, public, private, civil, military, cooperation between the nations, the local and the regional level. There are so many different aspects of collaboration, and I think that during this course we have kind of scratched the surface on this. I remember when I heard the previous discussion, we had a Director General in DSB. What did you say? The special feature? I'm the Norwegian, one of the Norwegian observers. We had a Director General who said that everybody wants a strong leader until they get one. And I think you can say something similar when it comes to cooperation. Everybody seeks cooperation until they're actually coordinated. And I think that's also one of the challenges we see, speaking from an authority side. I think that we have different systems in our country, but we all work on different aspects of cooperation. And it really takes time to make people cooperate through this kind of cooperation. So one of the most fundamental values, or should we say tools, that we have at hand is trust. And I think that's very high in the Nordic countries. So I think that's one of the huge advantages that we have.
Mm. So third takeaway, collaborate even if it's uncomfortable.
Going back to the first key takeaway that you mentioned, Johan, we often speak about the value of public-private partnership in a national setting. But a question to all of you, would it be realistic to create these joint private-public cooperation in a trilateral or bilateral context between Finland, Sweden and Norway? And if yes, when can this be achieved and to what extent?
Well, yes and no, I would say. There are definitely a need for national systems to actually being up and running in some way in order to get because we have different systems, and I think we all agreed that we will not be able to have the same system, and that's not what we are striving for. We are striving for a cooperation in a different way. But absolutely, I think that there are some proposals also to have a Nordic Joint Resilience Council, for example. I think it's a question about level of ambition. But I mean, we already have the bilateral agreement between Sweden and Finland between the government side, and we talk about joint stockpiling, etc. And I think it's absolutely a possibility to bring in the business community to discuss also on a Nordic level how can we more jointly work together in order to achieve more beneficial for all of us and also for our system. So yes, but I think that it's a different kind of level of ambitions when you do this.
Minna?
Yes, I would actually like to emphasize an existing example that has been created in the Nordic countries for a long time, is the Twin City network that most of the municipalities have, actually. So also the collaboration can be conducted on that kind of levels using the existing networks, because sometimes I'm a bit worried about that when we are trying to, we have this sense of urgency that obviously is also a little bit coming from the private sector because they want to get their innovations going, right? So then we might forget what we already have. So then we could start maybe thinking to utilizing these existing networks more clearly. And for example, at Borgå, we have a twin city in Norway, Hamar, and in Sweden, Lund. And we have just actually conducted meetings in practice, exchanging information on, for example, how to work with preparedness as a NATO country, which Norway actually has a lot of experience already.
And Dag, of your perspective, because DSB also have a quite new task on coordinating security of supply, for example. What's your perspective?
Yes, it's very new. We got it last Thursday, actually, so it's quite fresh. No, we don't begin from scratch because there has been work on security of supply from one of our ministries, Ministry of Trade, Industries and Fisheries. And they have been coordinating across the ministries, but they see that they need more hands-on coordination between agencies. So our new task will be to facilitate that coordination. And I think since you asked about the private sector and cross-border collaboration, I think it's quite essential that we begin with a Nordic or at least a trilateral cooperation on that aspect, because it makes no sense if Finland, Sweden and Norway should build up the same things individually. We have to look at, what are our comparative advantages, what can we do when it comes to joint stockpiling, and not least, where do we need to strengthen our infrastructure across countries so that we can enable goods and services to travel back and forth in times of crisis.
Johan, you wanted to make a
addition. I think there are already existing corporations. We have on a government side, of course, you have Nordefco, you have the Haga Corporation, etc. Bringing the business community in certain formats to those existing formats, which I think is possible. We also have a ongoing cooperation since a couple of years ago between the Nordic business confederations, discussing similar things on all different layers and levels. So I think, and we also have the Council of Nordic Council of Ministers, which I think very well could also bring in business community to a certain format. So I think we already have things in place. It's just how we actually connect between them in order to discuss it more.
Now we've learned, of course, that cooperation is important and that we need to be proactive and that all of these networks are already in place. So just going to a little bit more practical level, then after this course, now that you are finished, what will you do when you get back home to actually get working with your counterparts in the other countries? And how will you invite the business community in?
Well, I can begin. I'll start working on security of supply. Our first task will be, of course, to outline how should we do this. What do we need? What type of resources? And how will we organize it? That will be our first task. And of course, we will look at Sweden and Finland when doing that. I think, Finland has a lot of experiences with NESA and with stockpiling and been working with this for a long time. Sweden, MSB has got a similar assignment as us. Mikael, you mentioned that you got the assignment last summer. So ours is a bit newer. So I think that we can find very strong links here and build this up together.
Well, as already discussed on this stage, in Finland, the municipalities have very strong independence, and that also the flip side of the coin is responsibility. And I will be planning our next preparedness exercise, and there is a lot of material from this course that I can use in the scenario writing and planning, and obviously for a good exercise it has to be realistic. So maybe also from that we can adapt something to the next Twin City meetings too, to maybe exercise together, and also maybe arrange something to invite the citizens to listen to the discussion. We actually use events a lot as a form of informing and collaborating with citizens. So I have a lot of ideas to take with me from the course.
Great.
Yeah, we already have ongoing discussions within the confederations in all the countries and branch organizations with the companies that we need to do more. And one concrete action that we are preparing is also that we believe that it's a good thing to actually have a discussion between the confederations and also with the government side and responsible ministries or authorities. Because we are pretty convinced that in order to create resilience in our countries and also an increased level of deterrence and defense as well. It's impossible for the government or authorities to do it by themselves without the business, and we cannot do it without the government or the authorities. But I think we need to jointly more also identify the critical points that we need to deliver on, and that I think we should do jointly, joint discussion.
Somewhat of a follow-up question to that, what can you do within your organization, and also broadening a bit for other actors? For example, it has been mentioned in several of the reports the need to increase joint crisis response and preparedness exercises, both between public and private actors and between different levels of governments. How will you, within your organization, be able to take this forward? Do you have the mandate to start planning, for example, cross-border exercises? And also, what would you like to see on an overall, perhaps national level, together with the respective country?
Yeah, we are doing it on the national level. We are conducting. This year, 14 different tabletop exercises all over Sweden with approximately between 15 and 100 companies on each exercise. Together with a few authorities, MSB usually takes part, the security police, defense, armed forces, etc. When we are looking into 26, 27, I'm pretty sure that we could look into how to do it more jointly also cross-border. But it's our initiative, and what I really would applaud is more initiatives also from the government to actually invite the business community on exercises also conducted by the authorities in a much more volume than today. But otherwise, we will continue to do it ourselves, and it so far has been successful. I'm sure that we can do it also more on the cross-border way.
Minna?
Well, I probably touched a little bit on this topic in my previous comment. So what we will be emphasizing in the next period of preparedness planning, we always do periods so that we have like certain goals and targets. And excuse me, one of the targets is obviously that has not been so widely discussed on the stage today is the recovery. That in the era of polycrisis and when you have wicked problems going on here and there, on the municipality level, you really need to also plan for the recovery, because for the for the companies to get their workforce, people, it's every bit, it's all about people. How do we get people to recover and to rebuild whatever has been broken, and maybe cover on something that has not been broken and should not be that either. So we are also discussing recovery and what it's actually needed, and also from the scale of small companies. In Finland, there are a lot of small companies, 1 person or 10 persons, or like really small ones. So they are the ones who NESA is not working with. So we try to catch them on the municipality level.
Final remark.
I think that first and foremost, we will continue building on work that's already been done. During this course, we have discussed concepts like total defense and comprehensive security. For Norway, 2026 will be what we call the total defense year. We plan 5 different exercises there. The first one beginning already next week with a digital attack, and the last one in about a year time will be one called All on Norway exercises. And I think that one's going to be quite interesting because it will involve county governors, municipalities, private companies, individuals, and I think all these concepts that we have been discussing, all this collaboration and initiatives, it all has to be taken down to a level where people actually do something on the ground. For us, the municipalities play a key role in civil protection because they have to manage the consequences of all kinds of disasters. They have the responsibility for their own citizens. So involving them in this work, and I think maybe, as a result of this course, broadening the scope a bit, as you say, twinning municipalities between countries and so on would be a good approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan, Minna, Dag Ole. Thank you. Finally, we will hear some summarizing remarks and reflection from two of the partner organizations to the Hanaholmen initiative. And these remarks will be given by Abigail Choate, head of Center of Societal Security at the Swedish Defence University, and Janne Kenkinen, the CEO of the Finnish National Emergency Supply Agency, NESA. A warm welcome.
We'll spread out evenly.
And now we, of course, would like to ask you about your main comments and reflection about what has been said here by the participant from this year's course, their key takeaways. Do you have any initial thoughts about what has been mentioned here? Abigail.
Well, thank you. And first of all, thank you, Gunvor and team, for hosting yet another successful summit. And it's always a pleasure to come here. And having said that, I think I've read all the reports, and I think they're very, well written, sharp, and some of them also have some concrete conclusions and proposals. I think I see some common threads here. We all already heard from several panelists, and they also reflect in the reports that the golden nugget of the Nordic dimension is trust. And that is something very valuable, something that has to be balanced in the coming years and in the continuing work. We also talk about, the reports are also mentioning and describing the different the differences between the systems, but also the shared and common values, and that we should use this. We need to know our systems, we need to know our counterparts, we need to know who to call. And some of them also suggested we just merge all three, Norway, Finland, Sweden. That would make things easier in getting things done. I'm not sure everyone would agree, but I think it signifies that there is definitely a will in all of the reports to take further steps, and I think that's very encouraging.
You have quite a broad overview from the Swedish Defence University. Do most of the stakeholders in each country know who to call, would you say?
Yes and no. I think some of the reports here today, they reflect that they've learned so much, and now they do know who to call, and maybe they weren't so sure. On a national level, definitely, at least from the Swedish perspective, MSB having a crucial role in this, bringing people together. The educational sector where I work in, that we also work as a meeting place and enabler, like Hanaholmen as well, to bring people together, a little bit of matchmaking. You should talk to this person. And I think that's one of the strengths. But there is really room for improvement. I think a lot of people mention the local level. The county governor emphasized that is where people live, work. Let's not forget the civil side of this, and that should always be on focus here. So yes and no, room for improvement.
Janne, your main reflections.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks again for the kind invitation. Minister, State Secretary, Ambassador, all the participants, and thanks Gunvor for excellent, and the team for truly excellent organization. Well, just to comment on the possibility of a full merger of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, I was thinking that might be a tempting proposition, at least economically. Well, maybe on a more serious note, an excellent project. I think it has certainly proven its worth. I had the opportunity to give one speech, and we had a very good discussion in the context of the course. So at least that kind of showed me the topicality. It certainly showed that there's a lot of demand for these types of interactions, and I think interactions themselves are truly important at this particular moment in time and in these circumstances, that we kind of forge contacts, we kind of create conditions for concrete cooperation across different sectors, across different players. I think it's really, really important, and in that sense, the summit and the initiative around this Hanaholmen is really excellent. On the role of private entities, indeed, in Finland we have the public-private partnership for security of supply and resilience. It is what I've been calling a positive legacy system. It's not from last Thursday, it's from around 50 years ago. But having said that, at the present time it also needs adjusting, it needs development, and I think also from that perspective it's very welcome to have these intensified contacts with our Swedish and Norwegian friends. I think one comment I was thinking about is that in a way our philosophy, because we see that yes, companies might be somewhat tempted to participate our network and the kind of preparedness activities because they see that if they don't, there might be more regulation. That might be a good argument, and I kind of buy it, at least half of it. But at the same time, it's very evident from our kind of experience and practice that the companies, altogether 1,500 companies from various critical sectors, they are there on their own will. They want to learn risk management, continuity management skills. They want to, in fact, learn from their peers, and they want to understand the risk and threat situation. And we kind of create as an enabler an opportunity for that. So it's all about the critical private entities' readiness and risk management skills that we want to kind of develop and make sure that those skills more or less match the realities on the ground. And I think it's very important. The other story, which is also important, is the kind of contractual cooperation that we do with the companies that actually produce kind of preparedness service based on a contract or a contractual arrangement, altogether 200 different partners, and they are also important. And I'm very confident that we could see this type of cooperation, or both types of cooperation, also happening in the future bilaterally in the Swedish-Finnish context, but also involving Finland. And since Mikael is there, I can see him barely, but we had with MSP an excellent cooperation emerging, in fact very concrete, strong cooperation. Next year we are going to sort of set a set of concrete goals for taking these things forward, and also involving in the future companies from our respective countries. So I think the basis is good, and I think the takeaways from the participants here are not only topical, but they are extremely relevant. So thanks.
Then would you like to reflect a little bit on the kind of value added of the Hanaholmen Initiative Executive Education to your organizations? You are both from partner organizations to the initiative. So is this helping this work along? What is the main kind of like added value of this kind of cooperation and this course in particular?
Well, I think there are several aspects to that. It is, I think the main added value is the foundation of the Hanaholmen is there's such a array and varied topics, culture, languages, etc., that it springs from, and that reflects the concept of the comprehensive security or society or total defense in Sweden. That the foundation and the basis comes from a sort of a multi approach, what I think it's so valuable. And of course, it is also getting the personal, professional relationships that are formed here at the Hanaholmen that gives us as a partner to Hanaholmen, it gives us a lot of valuable insights. We are not only participating as conducting the program, but it's always a two-way learning. And things are happening so quickly right now, which is good. We talked about the sense of urgency, but it's actually it's a bit of a challenge to just follow all the developments, and on the national level, international. You had a great perspective of the European dimension here, which I think is really, really good. But you also have the local level where all the action needs to be implemented and happen. So for us, it's really a strategic partnership. We learn, and we do not only provide knowledge, but we create this meeting place, and we benefit from that greatly. So I think for us, it's a multiple answer, but end of the day, it's forming the personal relationships, getting the network, and maintaining the network. And Hanaholmen is a very important meeting place to do that.
Johanna?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think it's absolutely the case. I can pick up from this meeting place, because I was wondering that when driving to Hanaholmen now, just for this summit, I was thinking how many times I've been here. In fact, this year it's really a lot, and I always tend to see very relevant, good colleagues and friends, and that kind of testifies to the fact that indeed it is the relationships that we have to not only build for once, but we need to kind of cherish those, and we need to continue this cooperation. And I think this is working in many ways in a kind of a very positive manner. I wanted to say one thing about this initiative, and even more generally that often Finland still is kind of regarded as an sort of an example on preparedness. But frankly, I think that these encounters, these interactions, they're also important for our benchmarking, because there's so much that is now going on in Sweden, but also in Norway, that we need to understand what this is. We need to learn from Sweden. We need to learn from Norway. Our system is not perfect, absolutely not. But I think these kind of relationships then help us take these things forward jointly. And I think it's really absolutely necessary. Thank you.
As a final question to you, with your expertise here on the stage, one of the quotes from the reports that we would like to highlight is, Finland's centralized coordination enables unified responses. Sweden's decentralization allows flexibility, but risk fragmentation. Several of the previous speakers have said that we have different structures in Finland and Sweden. Would you say that these different levels of decentralization and centralization between the countries is an obstacle for joint crisis response? And if yes, how can we overcome it?
I think that quote has some merit to it. We do have different systems. They're described as more centralized in Finland and decentralized in Sweden. But it's there. I personally think you find your way to, it's a fact, and just work with what you have. I think the role of MSB is, of course, growing and is even more crucial. But by training and exercise, identifying the gaps, then you can overcome that. That's not the system. The system is not the problem. I think working around and working through the system in its best intentions, then we can really get things done. So I think exercises, training, identifying the gaps between different actors. That's the way forward. So there's a merit to it, but I don't think it's an obstacle in itself unless we make it one.
Johanna.
Well, it's an interesting statement. I'm not actually sure if I fully agree with that notion or characterization. I've been describing our activity at NESA, of course, representing only one organization in Finland as concerns comprehensive security overall and preparedness, by the way. But us being sort of the centralized element of an otherwise decentralized systems, and that also shows that it's not that centralized in Finland either, to be honest. And I think there's we could usefully make a distinction between what happens before the crisis and during, and by that I refer to preparedness before and to crisis response during the crisis. And I think as far as the preparedness sort of element is concerned, there's probably not too much need always for coordination if the different key organizations have a lot of initiative to do their own preparedness. I think that's good, and that probably functions fairly well in different levels without strong coordination. But for the crisis response, at least personally, I tend to be a little bit of a friend of coordination. The coordination was mentioned in a previous panel, but in order to have effective crisis response and to kind of lead it in a meaningful, effective way, you need coordination, and you need management, you need leadership, and that has to happen somehow in a centralized, coordinated way.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Abigail and Johanna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
And now some final information about the last program point here before we are able to go to lunch. Now we will have a presentation of diplomas to really remark the completion of this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Executive Course. So now I would like to welcome up Gunvor Kronman, the CEO of Hanaholmen, and also Peter Hultqvist, who is the chairman of the advisory board to the Hanaholmen Initiative, and also some practical information. We will have all of the participants from this year's course receiving their diploma. You don't have to clap for all of our 24 participants. We will do a joint clapping in the end. Warm welcome up.
Please. Now nobody dares to clap for.
And all of the participants, we know that you have received instruction that you should stand up here on the side, so you are able to quickly and smoothly receive your diploma. So please rise up.
Anders Berger. Ja, pröv. Johanna. Rolf Hellman. Magnus Hagman. Dagmar Högman. Martin Berg. Niklas Lemberg. Carina Ljungberg. Sofie Montelius. Jussi Mäkinen. Jukka Nikulainen.
Thomas Norlenius, Richard Nygård Scarborough, Pia Renqvist, Minna Ruotlanto, Juha Sjöberg, Heli Tammivuori, Fredrik Torp, Arvid Trueng, Riikka Tähtivuori, Harri Varhama, Lars Wikström, Jaakko Ylinampa.
And please, a warm applaud. And now, finally, to give the closing word for this year's summit, and hereby also this year's Hanaholmen Initiative Executive Education Program, please, warm welcome, Peter Hultqvist, member of the Swedish Parliament and the chair of the Committee on Defense.
Thank you so much, dear ladies and gentlemen. I think that Hanaholmen Initiative has a very important role in these challenging times. This war in Ukraine is the first big war in our part of Europe since the Second World War. And we don't know the end of it, and we don't know the future. The only thing we know is that we need to prepare for defending ourselves. We need also good connections between the military part of the defense and the civilian defense, and we must also mobilize the force in the enterprises and companies in a working total defense system. I see our courses and what we are doing here at Hanaholmen is a way to contribute to these important processes. And it's also a responsibility for all of us to spread this message in companies, in authorities, and in political groups that we now need to shape up and we need to be together. To be together is the answer to all challenges. That's a way also to build deterrence that our societies are sustainable. And we also need to have that situation and spread that message in Europe, in European Union, in NATO. To be strong together is the only way to handle the situation just now. Thank you so much for all contributions today, to the panelists, to the speakers, to all important insights that you have shared with us, and good luck for all these fine people that have now delivered the result of this course that we have finally seized the end of just now. Thank you so much, and now it's lunch. Thank you.
Thank you. And please stay for just a few minutes, because we will give a little bit of time for the first row. We have some people who need to be elsewhere on schedule. So I ask you to stay for a little bit. And of course, this is an opportune moment to take those photographs for your Instagram account and so on of the course, which is, Finnish-Swedish cooperation in the flesh, because these people now know each other and know how to call each other if there is some kind of issue that covers both our countries. But yes, come a little bit closer so that the cameras can get you. But on the behalf of us moderators as well, me and Hanna, we would like to say a very big thank you. Thank you to, of course, all of our distinguished speakers, to the participants in the course, without whom this would not be possible, to Hanaholmen for organizing this amazing event as the end of this amazing course, and then, of course, to you, the audience. So we are all here together to celebrate this Finnish-Swedish cooperation, and now we shall continue to do so in Restaurang Platz, which is on the second floor and where you can have lunch. Thank you so much for participating in there.